Hello and welcome to Core Wellness's training. This is the Practical Ethics of Daily Practice, 3 CEUs, and we're so happy to have you here. This is an amazing project that we've undertaken to be able to get a hands-on, practical, very applicable training for CEUs. If you're watching this video right now, then that means that you're doing the home study course, which is totally cool. If you are trying to get Category B credits, that's what you would get over here. And if you want more information, just check out our website at corewellceu.com/home study. We have all the information. We try to keep up to date with the board requirements. Of course, we encourage you to speak to your board as well. But at the time of this recording in February 2018, the Board of Social Work allows you to get 20 CEU credits. And from the requirements for ethics, 3 of them can be either Category 1, which is live, or Category 2, is also acceptable, which is home study, which is what you're doing right now. So this would meet the requirement of the every 2-year Category 2 training in ethics if you're a social worker. When it comes to the Board of Psychologists, it's basically the same story. You're required to get every renewal period 3 either home study or in-person CEU hours of ethics, so this would count. And if you are an LCPC, then this would be a regular Category B training. So I hope that you enjoy, and I hope that you learn practical things. Look at your practice and figure out, based on this training, if there's anything that you would like to change in the way you do things that can enhance your practice going forward. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Joseph Tropper, and we have 2 sets of people here. We have in-person, and we have webinar as well. So I want to take the first minute or two just to kind of orient us to see what we're doing. Everybody seeing that? Okay, good. All right, so far so good. So if you're in the room, you already have the handouts over there, and you can. This is Practical Ethics for Daily Practice 3 CEUs. So it's gonna be 3 hours. There's 3 segments, pretty simple, and we'll usually take a 1 to 5 minute break in between the 2. How we're running, and like I said, we start on time, we end on time. So if you're here in person, then that's going to be a Category 1 or Category A, depending on which social work or psychologist, whatever background you are. And if you're on the live webinar channel, then you are going to be getting a same exact thing. If it's live interactive, it counts. And if anybody's watching this afterwards, which some people are doing as well, then that would be a Category 2 or Category B or home study, depending on what you are. But if you have any questions, you can email us. And there's a link on the home page on the webinar that takes you to all the paperwork you would need. Just click on the orange buttons over there. So if anyone's asking about the handouts, just click on the link above and you will see all the orange buttons that say handout and evaluation form, which you submit at the end. It just basically says that you were present and there and asks you a couple of quick questions. And the same thing in the room here, we'll give them out during the last break and you guys can fill them out. At the end, we print out, we'll give you all the certificates. If there's a spelling mistake or anything, there should be a secretary here in an hour or 2, and she'll fix it. Otherwise, we'll email it to you. Okay, cool. Any questions? Okay. That answers. All right. So when we talk about ethics, I think it has a very patriotic sound to it. You know, and so we're going to focus on the law segment and different ethical things. Just a quick overview. And can everybody see this? Is that clear? Might be in the way a little bit. So basically, there's 3 segments. The first one we're going to talk about just an introduction, get to know everybody as much as we can, and ethical dilemmas explored. There's a big part of understanding ethics is just understanding that there's ethical dilemmas that come up and get in the way of our practice. And if we could learn how to better define them, I think we're going to really enjoy that. The next segment is about a half hour. The next 2 half-hour periods are the ACA ethics, which I think is a very important one, and the NASW ethics. We examine specifically the social work ethics because they're one of the largest ones, and they also mandate that we look at their ethics. So we try to do that. And the truth is, you'll see there's a tremendous amount of overlap between them. There's very few discrepancies. Some of them are really short, some of them are really long. So we'll kind of get used to that. And then we'll talk about 3 preventative models and 3 proactive models. The difference between preventative is before the problem arises, before the ethical dilemma comes, and proactive is something came up, and now what do? You could apply both to both, but I like these 3 preventative, and I like these 3 proactive, so we'll learn about those. And then in the last segment, we'll do 10 common issues that a lot of people come to me and say, oh, I had no idea this is an issue. We've been violating this. And we'll talk about that. If you have any specific questions, I'll try to answer them in general, but you could certainly talk to me at any break if you're not sure about something, and I'll try to tell you, based on my experience, how I've dealt with that. Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to start our first segment. It's about an hour, and anyone here needs a restroom break or anything, or wants something to eat, just go in and out as you please. All right, so just an introduction, which is to all of us, and then we'll get into some ethical dilemmas and have an interesting discussion about that. Whenever you see this icon over here, I'm asking you to take a moment just to kind of think and share with your own experiences. So if you're in the room, then that means that you could take a moment and just kind of share what your experiences are, and I'm going to ask if you kind of move forward so you could talk, because the microphone that's broadcasting to everybody else is here. So, and I'll sometimes try to summarize what you say. It's not because I'm not hearing you. It's A, because I want to make sure I understood you, and B, I want to make sure everybody online hears as well.
But they're not going to see us? Or just
they can see you if you would like to be seen.
No thanks.
Okay. We have that option. And, okay, and then anyone online that has a question, you could either click to raise your hand to speak if you actually want to talk, or you can type in a question which will go to everybody, and if you have questions, we'll be happy to address them as well. If anybody online does have any questions, let me know now, and we will certainly address those. Okay, so we have 9 people online now, 3 people in the room. That's cool. Okay, that's the way it goes. Okay, so a lot of people want to know about the fulfillment of the Maryland ethics. So the Maryland ethics requirement is a more recent thing. Basically, if you're a licensed social worker, then you're required to get 3 of them per renewal, per every 2 years. What a lot of people don't know is that you could actually do those Category 1 or Category 2. So one participant called me today and said that she can't make it in person. So I said, well, either go to the webinar if you want Category 1, if you happen to need them. Social workers need 40 CEUs, so 20 of them could be Category 1, and 20 of them could be done online anyway. And out of those 3 ethics that you need, they can be done online home study as well, as long as you do them every renewal. I'm an LCPC. I'll talk about me at the end. I don't need any ethics, although I like giving them because they're fun. And I'm an LCPC supervisor, so it comes in handy to know this stuff for the 5 social workers that work here and the 5 LCPCs that work here. For psychologists, they also need 3 CEUs in ethics. And those, again, could be done as home study. That's what they call it, or they can be done here. So if you're a social worker or psychologist, welcome. This will fulfill your 3 ethics requirements. And just going forward, know that unless the board changes it, you could actually do them online. And that's why we update the ethics to make them more interesting every couple of years, because there's always problems that come up. If you're a psychologist, I'll just say there are 2 other things that you need to take. You also need to take what's it called? A cultural competency training, which we also offer. And you also have to, if you're a supervisor, if you supervise psychological associates, then you also need to take a training in that. And again, those could be taken as type 1 or 2. All right, any questions about that ethical requirement? Okay, so we're all here for that. All right, so if we could take a moment just to kind of introduce yourselves and just to share anything about yourselves, I think that would be helpful. Just what's your name, education, license, and what brings you here today? And then I'll go last. And if anyone online on the webinar wants to introduce yourself, if anyone came on later, they might not see what you wrote. So if you could just repost what you wrote, just click it down there, and I'll read off some of them at the end. So maybe we'll go around the room this way.
Sure. I'm Stacy. I'm a clinical social worker.
What brings you here today?
Right. I need my ethics
Okay.
CEUs, and Sunday is great, and it was convenient, so
Perfect.
I thought I'd try that.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
My name's Nicole. I'm an LMSW. Trying to knock out CEUs. It's nice when I don't have to go downtown to do it.
Okay, perfect. Welcome. Anybody else?
I'm Andrea, and I am a gerontologist, and I'm an LMSW, PhD in geriatrics, and I have been facing a lot of ethical dilemmas in my work recently, so I'm very interested in getting these ethics CEUs.
Nice. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. And let me just read. There are a few comments online, so give me 1 second, and we will just hop onto that screen. So Susan, as you can see, Susan says, I'm a psychologist. Monifa, and I apologize. Psychological associate. Susan, if you haven't found the handouts yet, click on the link up here, and you will see them. Karen, welcome. And Allison's asking about the eval. Okay, so the evaluation form, the easiest way to do it if you're online, and hi, Allison, you're a social worker in private practice in Frederick. Okay, cool. The easiest way to do that is to just click on the link above and then follow that and submit there. It's a Google Doc, and it's very quick. If you want to fill out a hard copy one, then you could just either fill that out on your computer and email it to us or fax it to us. You'll see the instructions on there. All right, back to regular scheduled program. Thanks, Motifa. She said I pronounced her name right. Monifa. Okay. All right, a little bit about me. So I have a master's in mental health counseling. I'm an LCBC clinician and supervisor here at Core Wellness. We have two companies. Recovery Counseling Center focuses a little bit more on addiction. Core Wellness is more of the holistic one, which is where we do all the trainings out of. I deal with a lot of trauma, and you'll hear a lot that comes out. I think that's a big ethical issue that comes up for people as well. And I think some of the ethical issues that we run into involve clients who have traumatic issues that make them more vulnerable and sometimes more difficult to deal with. So I work in that field as well. So to me, ethics are important because I think they define what we do, and certainly, as the director of operations here, I run into a lot of ethical dilemmas. So you'll hear a lot about the things that I run into in my experience, and of course, you guys are welcome to chime in if you have any questions as well. Okay, so nice to meet everybody. We have 4 main objectives today. One of them is to go over the basic principles of what ethical codes are all about, and I think you'll find that interesting because a lot of people find ethics to be boring and laborious, and I don't know how many people would take an ethics class if it wasn't mandated, but I will try to make it a little bit more enjoyable if I can. We'll go through 3 preventative measures that I think even if you walk away with one and you say, I really like that one, I think it'll really change what you do in your practice, especially if you're in private practice. It's really important. But even if you're in the public sector, there are ethical dilemmas that come up all the time, whether many of people in here, I certainly have had to report, unfortunately, a number of abuse cases, physical, sexual, emotional, elderly. You're in the elderly care. I mean, you hear about it all the time. And on the one hand, we have to be careful not to jump to conclusions, and we need to take things with a grain of salt. If a client with dementia is reporting that she's being abused, or a 4-year-old child is reporting something that sounds like abuse, we don't want to throw the family into turmoil, but at the same time, we're also mandated reporters. And so it's really important to be able to have the ethical codes and someone that we could speak to make sure that we are doing this right. So I think that's one of the things that you'll hear me focusing on today. And then 3 decision-making models. They are very similar, but you'll pick the one that works best for you, perhaps, and you'll use that in your own practice. And then 10 common ethical issues explored, which I think is pretty interesting to go through some scenarios. And I'll expose those scenarios, some of them to you from this first segment here, and then you'll kind of have something to think about if you get bored. And we'll come back to them at the end, and we'll try to go through each one and dissect them a little bit. Some people like the hair splitting, and some people find it annoying, so you'll decide what you like. One of the questions people ask is, how do you make ethics enjoyable? It's kind of like having a pleasant dentist visit. So I challenge myself, and I challenge you to have a good time today. I hope at the end of 3 hours, you won't just have a stiff neck and stiff back, but I hope that you'll gain some really fun things and really interesting things that are helpful for your practice and will make you a better protected clinician. Okay, fair enough? Any questions or anything? All right, let's start with ethical dilemmas. Okay, so we're going to define what an ethical dilemma is, but first I want to just draw your attention to, if you just open up your browser and Google ethical violations. So the truth is, this is just a recent search, you're not necessarily going to find that many social workers, psychologists, professional counselors, marriage and family therapists that have things against them. If you open up any board, for example, in Maryland, they're going to have listings of complaints that came against them, and they're pretty scary if you look at them. They're literally, someone had a complaint filed against them, and what happens is the board takes the complaint and they contact you and they want to get your testimony. Sometimes it's a minor thing, but sometimes it's a major thing. And if it becomes a major issue, a large issue, then it actually could go to the board's hearing committee, and it could actually end up in court, which is what you're looking at if you look online at recent complaints. You'll see people's names on there for ethical violations, and you'll see the entire story and court case there printed publicly. So we really don't want to end up on the board's front list. But if you check out your board, you will see that. And I don't know about you guys, but I've interacted with a lot of people at a professional level, and I've worked with people whose names are up there. Quite frankly, I've had the opportunity to speak to some of them as to what happened, whether I was supervising them or whether we knew each other professionally. And some of them will claim they didn't do anything wrong, and some of them will say, yeah, I made a mistake. So we definitely don't want to be the next person on that list. And there's a lot of ways that we could prevent. First of all, being an ethical person is really important. There's a lot of things that you could do that will help prevent you running into ethical issues, which we really want to do. The preventative model is the best. You'll hear that from me all day. An ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. And that's really what we're going towards. Some of the ethical violations that you'll see, and we're going to talk more about this, are boundary issues. So not just, you were too friendly or too nosy, but for example, you'll see cases where people came in to be treated, and the therapist falls in love with that person's father or mother, and that's an ethical violation. It's a dual relationship, and not even necessarily the client themselves, but sometimes there's other things. So we need to be careful. We need to have good supervision, and we need to make sure we know what the laws are. You'll find breaches of confidentiality as a large number of things. There aren't too many sexual allegations out there, for example, and one of the reasons is because therapists are actually from the top 3 most ethical behaviorally and just in general. They're very trusted. They're at the top of doctors. And it's not to say that there aren't ethical violations that take place. But for example, if you look at your liability insurance, which you have to carry, and if your agency has one for you, you definitely want to get your own just to have. It's not that expensive. I mean, we complain about it because it's more money, and private practice is what it is, right? But how much is your liability insurance? About maybe $200 a year. If you're a student, it could be half that price, right? If you're a part-timer, it could be $125. Why is it so cheap? Well, it's cheap because therapists don't often get sued, okay? And if they do, it's very easy to defend them. They have good notes, they have documentation, and if there's any real ethical violation, they're not covered anyway. So if they had sex with the client, they're not covered anyway. So good luck to you. So insurance companies don't have a problem insuring you because you're not a high-risk liability. Now here's an interesting fact. We're a private practice, so we stay on top of these things. At what point does it become dangerous for a client to hold a balance? You heard what I said. There's a certain point where a client has a large balance, and then they start complaining that therapy is not helping. So at what point? What's the magical number that makes it? Anybody want to guess online or in here?
There's a magical number.
There's a magical number that when clients hit this number, they start suing and saying that you're not really helping me.
500.
I have no idea.
You think more or less than 500?
Less.
What do you?
I have no idea.
Okay, you're actually right. That is the magical number, 500. If you're in private practice, my advice is make a policy and put it in writing that a client is not allowed to hold a balance of more than one session at a time. Now, it doesn't mean you won't violate it, and sometimes you could say, well, I can make an exception for 2 because you don't want to lose them and you want to keep the continuity, but that's it. And that's our policy here. You're allowed to hold the balance of one session. Okay? All of a sudden, you could have a client for 3 years and you're really helping them and you could track it, but all of a sudden they hit 500 and they start disappearing on you. It interferes with the therapeutic relationship, and that's when a lot of things happen. Okay? Thank goodness we haven't had too many problems. We have a collection agency, which I hate using, and I tell the clients I hate using it. And generally, if anyone will call, as long as you call us back and tell us you're working on it, you pay me $5 a month, you won't hear a word from our collection agency. You disappear on us for 5 months, then you're going to get something in the mail because a contract is a contract. Okay, so there are numbers that make people get a little nervous. Okay, if anybody has any questions online, just make sure you just type it, and we will certainly take a look. Okay, so we don't want to be the next person that has ethical violations. How many people here do supervision? Anybody online? Okay, I do. So some of the ethical violations, about 1 in 6, 10, depending on which board, are for supervisees. If your supervisee does something wrong, you could be liable. For example, there's a psychologist, and I don't mean this as any name, but I call up a few of them, and they're public knowledge. I'm not going to say anyone's name. There's a psychologist that was supervising a supervisee, and the supervisee filled out a court-ordered evaluation, and the supervisee wasn't qualified to do that. And the supervisee wrote inappropriate things in there, and then signed his or her name, and the supervisor just signed off on it, and it was a legal document that went to court, which is just stupid. And it was a massive lawsuit because it ended up messing up a custody case and a financial case, and they had no right to do that, and the guy lost his license for a year because of that act. So if you just look through the 200 to 500 things, or it's more like 100 to 200 ethical violations, they're a little scary. Okay, and we would think, wow, we're so nice, why would someone sue us? Well, you got to protect yourself. Okay, so knowing the ethical way to deal with things, I think, is very, very important. Have I made my argument? Okay, so that's why I think this course has a lot of use, because it's going to teach us how to stay away from problems. One of the most important things about ethical arguments, and if you've taken any classes with me, and some people online have been back before because they like us, I always show this picture in every training. I always find a way to show it. But I love it because we all see things differently. Okay, and it's so important when it comes to ethics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a video. I'm going to show 3 videos, and I want to get your opinions on it. And each one is kind of similar, but very different in certain dynamics. And I want to show you, these are examples of what might be considered ethical violations or ethical dilemmas, or perhaps you're going to probably take sides with someone, and you'll probably all agree on which side you take. It doesn't matter. The point is that there's ethical things that are going on. If I could trouble someone, just close the door, because I'm not sure if anyone's in the offices, but I think at this point everyone's here. Thank you very much. If anyone needs to go in and out, feel free to do that. Okay, so this is just a screenshot, but
Lasting lesson for suspected car thief: don't mess with mom.
Tonight, 19-year-old Bernardino Santiago is in police custody after an angry Bronx mother literally beat him down. The whole thing caught on camera. CBS News' Andrea Klein-Thomas has the story.
It was the wrong day to mess with Taisha Jones. That's her, captured on cell phone video, taking matters into her own hands.
I just kept hitting him, saying, you was trying to steal my car. Like, really? Are you serious?
This morning, Taisha was preparing to take her son to school when her 5-year-old noticed someone was inside her car.
As I got closer, I see the guy in the driver's seat bending down over, like something in there. And I don't know what happened. I blacked out after that. I couldn't tell you. I just went into rage.
The commotion got the attention of Katie Mack, herself a filmmaker and director who was in her apartment and does not know Taisha.
When I looked out the window, I saw the woman pulling the guy out of her truck, throwing him to the floor, and beating him.
Max shot this video. Police say the suspect is 19-year-old Bernardino Santiago.
And then he tried to get away, so he tried to take off his shirt, and that's when I sat down on him.
She sat on him until police arrived. It was hours before Taisha saw the video. Most of it she doesn't remember. You see, her car had been vandalized twice in recent weeks.
I saved to get that car myself. I'm a single parent. I saved to get that.
She has a heart condition and uses a walker, but her adrenaline kicked in. Today, she was not going to be a victim.
I just had enough. It's time to fight back. And I don't think this is fair that people work hard for their things and for somebody to just take your things away.
Bernardino Santiago did not receive medical attention. According to police, he was, quote, highly intoxicated. They said he told officers that he thought he was in an Uber.
okay. So anybody have opinions? And because this is an ethical discussion, if anybody online wants to type their opinion as well, we would love to hear from you guys as well, and I'll read them off. But I don't want you just to tell me, oh, he was right, she was right, he was. That's not the point. But think about why, just for a moment, even though like it might seem totally obvious to you. Whose side do you take?
I would take hers.
And why? What are you evoking?
She was protecting her property.
Okay, so self-defense.
Yep.
Yeah, she was doing self-defense. You come into my space. I got a kid in the car. This is my car. What are you doing? She might have even known he was drunk, which makes it even more, convincing that it's his problem. So self-defense, and that makes perfect ethical sense. And God forbid if a client attacks you ever. I don't know about you guys. I was only attacked once. Now it wasn't that scary. He was an 8-year-old kid, and he had severe ADHD. He was in foster home, and he picked up a chair. He threw it at me. I was fine. I moved out of the way. Okay, the rest of the story I'll save for a different time when I do my supervision, because my supervisor couldn't understand why I wrote in the note that client is being discharged and I'm not seeing him again. And that was the second incident we had. But anyway, we'll save that for the supervision time. Okay, any other things that you evoke that say, I stand behind him or I stand behind her?
I have a trauma background training, So when she's like, "Oh, I blacked out. I didn't remember," and the adrenaline, to me, it's just like, well, that was a trauma response, of course, to feeling threatened. I mean,
Right.
I'm assuming this stuff, but I can't not think that way because of my training. So of course I'm taking her side, whether he's drunk or not, whether he thought it was an Uber or not. Like, she's going to react. This is her property. She feels threatened, and
Right.
she didn't do anything
Right.
wrong, and it's not like it was random.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
For my brain.
Okay, so the trauma focus, let me put a little spin on it, okay? There was a case that Peter Levine, who's my trauma guy that I talk a lot about, so he believes in trauma. Trauma, in his opinion, is that you get stuck. And he talks about a rape case where a woman was raped, and 15 years later, she killed the man that raped her, okay? And in his professional opinion, he believes, and I'm not arguing with this, and he believes that that was the first time that she snapped out of the trauma, and that was just her immediate response to what happened. That's his theory. He's not saying that he would take her off, you know, whatever the punishment was, etc. But he believes that that was still self-defense. It's just an interesting thing. But when clients report to us that they black out, where do we hear this a lot? In trauma, but also in anger management. Right? We do a lot of anger management things.
Substance abuse.
Or substance abuse, which are similar.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason that SAMHSA, which is the substance abuse division of the government, puts out all the anger management manuals. Because people that are, you know, drinking and high have anger problems. They're disinhibited. So they're going to do risky sexual things and risky behavioral things. So, and again, the people here are typing the same thing, that it's self-defense or trauma. So this makes a lot of sense. It was self-defense. What would have happened if she would have killed him? Would you still say that?
Yeah.
Okay. What if she would have just pulled out a gun and shot him in the head? Was that you might argue, was it necessary? Was it not? I don't know. I would definitely hear her out. She might say, you know, we didn't see what was happening, or she might say that she had a traumatic experience where she was kidnapped for a day and, you know, promised herself it would never happen, right? But it's very easy to take sides with the victim here and say that what she did was 100% justified. And I don't think the police had any problem with it. I think they, you know, agreed with it. Did you want to say
I don't think their arguments, though, are mutually exclusive. Like, I side with her, and, like, I don't think she did anything wrong. And I think his argument that I was drunk or I thought it was a Uber, it's like, great, you can fight that. Like, she can be right. She can definitely be right, and then he can be dealt with.
Okay.
At another, you know what I mean? That's your time to do it in court. So I don't necessarily think it's, I mean, when I was watching it, it was obviously like, okay, she was in the right, but trying to take a step back and just think, okay, she was in the right, but, like, he can deal with it. And, like, they could both be right. You know what I mean? Just because she's right doesn't mean he's not.
Okay, fine. Well said. Thank you. You sound like a real social worker.
You have that problem.
It's not necessarily a problem. Okay, that's video one, which I think we'll all agree on. Okay? Let's move on to this one. Have any of you seen this one? I find this one very entertaining.
Two prisoners make a run for it. Not so fast. The judge yanks off his robe and gives chase.
You look like Superman and you're taking off after the crooks.
Yeah, some people have said that. They bolt out of the courtroom. One desperado slips and leaves a red shoe behind. Then the knuckleheads in handcuffs head straight for the stairs, but the judge is right behind them. There the prisoners go, bounding down the stairs. But fearless Judge R.W. Buzzard of Washington State is closing in. They make a dash for the exit. One gets away. Then the judge makes a desperate lunge and nabs the other one right by the collar.
Kind of gave him a little shove as I was coming off the stairs and slow him down and then just grabbed him and held him.
Here comes the judge, indeed.
Okay? What do you think about that one? Ethical, unethical? Absolutely ethical?
Well, that's not fair. I don't know what they were in for. I guess it wouldn't matter. I was just thinking, like, these people are under arrest for something, and I just thought, what if someone did something to someone I cared about or me, and then they were just going to get away?
I mean, what if they were both there for car napping, which I think is what they were there for, a financial thing, not an assault or anything.
It doesn't look like he really.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the statutes are for judges, but do they have a rule about you can't have physical contact? Like, he's not a security guard. He's not trained to do that. like just his role there. Like I totally understand why he would want to,
Yes.
but like
Where is the security guard though? Like I'm not
I don't
disagreeing with you,
know.
but it's like shouldn't there have
Yes.
been
There did
someone
not look
there?
like there was.
Is it really his job to jump out of his seat and go like chase
Was it
them?
unethical that they weren't properly staffed?
Yeah, like
That the
there's
judge-
a bigger issue there.
So
Yeah.
Allison's agreeing with you guys. She writes unethical. What is the judge's role?
Yeah.
And now you see that's why I transitioned from the first video where my role is to protect myself and my family, and that's very easy to see. But then we move on to this case where it's like, well, what is the judge's role?
Well, what if they escaped and hurt someone? Then wouldn't everyone be flipping out? Like, why didn't the judge or a lawyer?
Who's liable? Like,
Yeah.
who's liable?
Who would be liable to protect the public from these people?
A security.
Right. And
Which was not what's said.
Which was-
Like where's the security guard?
Exactly. And that, right. So the question becomes, well, who's responsible here? Right. Well said. And this is when it comes to ethical things. You know, things come our way, and then it's like, well, who's responsible? Let's say you get an anonymous call, and someone says, you know, you're seeing this client. You say, I can't confirm or deny anything. Well, they're being sexually abused. Huh? Who are you? What does that mean? Now what do you do? Remind me. We'll talk about that exact case because that happened in real life. Okay? And it happens all the time. Someone calls you and says, I know you're seeing my son, and I know he won't let you talk to me, but can you listen? And different clinicians are going to have different opinions, by the way. Because if I know this guy doesn't talk to his mom and has a feud with her, and he ever finds out that I even listen just for productive reasons so I know how crazy she is and I can say, okay, then I have an ethical violation in that I've hurt him. I've betrayed his trust. Which is why I would always say to this client, I say, I can't confirm or deny any clients of mine, but what I can say is that if there is someone that I see, I always tell them I'm happy to talk to their family members as long as they give me written permission. Click. I'm not engaging in that. Okay? When I worked in a methadone clinic many years ago, I got a phone call from the girlfriend of one of my favorite clients, and she says, I'm really sorry to tell you, he overdosed over the weekend and he's dead. Okay. I had met her once, so I knew she existed. I knew the client, and it was very likely that he would overdose. And so I told the nurses at the station, and they tried calling a few different hospitals. The guy walks in the clinic the next morning. Hey, Joe. So what happened? He said, oh, my girlfriend was pissed off at me. She called every single person in my life and told them that I overdosed. I'm fine. Okay? It happens. When you deal with that population, you have a lot more entertaining stories. Okay? But we have to be careful what we believe when we hear from family members. Okay? Okay, so Allison is saying that she still feels very strongly that it is just not the judge's role. Okay. That brings us to the next video. You see there's a progression here, and sometimes it's hard to define what is our role. And as therapists, we're kind of expected to be the do-it-alls, and that becomes a problem for us sometimes in our own codependency or our own desire to please people. So look at this last video, which I think we've taken a progression from protecting yourself, protecting the courtroom, and then there's your responsibility at work.
Did the judge get in trouble?
No.
Sorry. So they
So
the court deemed that.
Oh yeah, they thought it was fine. But even if you were to go in front of another judge, they're all. I mean, no offense to judges.
Right. I just wanted to.
They're not going to.
Their standpoint was.
There's nothing they could do. They're going to say the judge made an ethical call. That that's what's going to happen. I mean, you have to keep in mind, judges have the right to do a lot. They have a lot of flexibility. I've been in court cases where judges have literally yelled at people and said, "Be quiet, or I'm going to hold you in contempt." Or you're acting inappropriate, and they'll just call them out, even though it's a very sensitive case, and that person, I'm sure, is not going to be happy to have a judge calling them out. But judges have a lot of ethical flexibility because they kind of are the law. But so do social workers. We also have a lot of flexibility and power, so we have to be careful that we're not exploiting it. Okay, that's basically what I'm trying to show here. Listen to this story.
A teller at this Seattle bank who swung into action when a would-be robber approached his counter has been fired. The robber put a bag on the counter in front of Jim Nicholson at this key bank branch.
At that point, I grabbed the bag, I threw it on the ground, and I said, where is it, referring to if he had a weapon.
Nicholson then lunged across the counter. The robber turned around and ran. But Nicholson didn't give up. He chased him a few blocks and tackled him. He held on until police arrived.
If I allowed him to get away, then he would just continue doing it. He could come back to our branch. He could, go to another bank.
2 days later, KeyBank fired him, telling him he violated the bank's security policies.
Maybe he shouldn't be the guy out front when bank robbers come in, but he should still be able to work at the bank. All he was doing is helping. I think what the teller did was right.
You actually endanger the rest of the people in the bank.
I did security in the bank for a few years.
KeyBank refused to comment on the firing. Nicholson says he understands why.
I hoped that maybe they would give me a reprimand or, a write-up, something like that. But no, it ended up in termination.
Police and the FBI discourage such heroics. Bank tellers are trained to get robbers out the door quickly and are advised against possibly escalating a situation over money that's federally insured. Matt Friedman, The Associated Press.
Okay, we come back to Think and Share. This is the final one. So we can see how we've progressed from a woman being mugged or a car being stolen to bank robbery. Now, what are the opinions? Some people are pro and some people are anti. The bank had no right to fire him, or he deserves to be fired.
I can see it both ways because, I think he had nothing but good intentions, and he thought he was doing something protective.
Okay.
Maybe he didn't have enough information about what the policies were, which is his fault.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay.
That's difficult.
That's a good defense.
Yeah.
What about you, Nicole? Looks like you have something to say.
Why was he supposed to? I guess someone could come back to my argument and say, I could see where this could turn on me, but what was he supposed to do? Stop and think about it? You know what I mean?
He just responded.
He responded in a way. So I don't know if I'm against or for firing him, but I can be empathic to his actions.
Okay. And what about you?
I would say he would need to be fired because there's guidelines and he disobeyed his guidelines.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I was actually in a bank when it was robbed. It's pretty cool. I don't write this stuff up. I was in the Green Spring Bank of America. About first of all, if you go to any of those banks in the Green Spring shopping center, they're literally robbed once a month. So if you want, it's great for trauma training. It used to be once every couple of months. I'm serious. There's so many banks there, whether Wells Fargo, whatever. Anyway, so I was in the bank, minding my business. I was in line, probably about 4 people ahead of me, and the guy at the front of the bank did the classic thing, which was he put up, I saw him there. And he wrote, "I have a gun in my pocket. Please give me all the money." Okay. So I saw the teller started hyperventilating. And at that point, we're therapists, so we always want to respond. So I realized something was very wrong. And there was a number of kids who were just running around in the front. So I whispered to the mom, "Get your kids away," because I'm a dad and I know, and she's looking at me why are you telling me what to do with my kids? But anyway, as the guy walked out of the bank, what they do is they actually lock the bank electronically, and they basically got locked in. And the manager comes out and says, "Okay, we were just robbed," and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" And one guy says, "Well, I'm late to a meeting. Let me out." And he slipped out. So I'm a therapist, so I stuck around for a few minutes till I did that same thing, and they let me out too. But she says, "Nobody talk. We want you all to be witnesses, and if you talk to each other, then it's not going to count because you're going to say something inappropriate, and nobody talk." So I said to them, "Well, it's a good thing you guys have security cameras up." And the manager looks at me and says, "Those are all duds. They don't work."
Oh my God.
So serves you right. I mean, not that you deserve to be robbed, but anyway. I came back 2 days later to deposit the check that I was trying to deposit, and they were putting up real cameras. But, the protocol when you're in a bank situation is, and everyone is trained this way, is very clearly give them whatever they want, actually give them as least amount of money. I think the average bank robber, you get $1,200, and you almost always get caught. Yeah, it's very cool. Banks don't have that much money in there, and also they're trained to give you less because you're nervous, you want to get out, and they're nervous, they want to get you out. So the average bank robberies they happen on Fridays when people need money for the weekend, and they happen at time you don't get that much money. And sometimes even have dud bags they give you that have chemicals on them, or serial bills so they can catch you better. But this bank was not prepared at all. But the protocol is get the guy out or get the woman out as fast as possible. You could open that. There might be someone coming. Come on in. Welcome. Come on in.
Well, that's the protocol. That changes everything.
Right.
Knowing that they have something in, but now I'm definitely it should have been.
Right.
Should have known those things.
Right. If that I didn't know that, so I had so much empathy for him. But now that I know they're all prepared, I'm more
As if he just heard them.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Was he not properly trained?
Right.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Didn't know what takes the time to right. But if he knew all of that, that's
Okay, so Susan wrote, "It's hard for me not to be empathetic for someone with good intentions. If the consequences were different and people got hurt, I would have a different opinion."
Yeah.
Right, and in that case, no one got hurt. But the point here is that someone really could have gotten hurt, and that's my concern. If someone could get hurt, then we need to be responsible to make sure that no one gets hurt. Welcome. So you were online, and now you came in. Okay, we'll pass you. Okay, no problem at all. We'll pass you there's the handouts if you want a copy, and we'll introduce you after the break. So welcome. Are we warm enough in here? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me turn this off.
Maybe a little
Yeah.
too warm.
Okay. Yeah, it gets a little warm.
If I'm too warm,
Now
I-
I'm going my summer gear.
I keep it hot until people complain that it's too hot. Because I had this lady who was shivering throughout the whole thing one time, and she's like, everything was a great course, but I just couldn't breathe. And then a few winters ago, one of my clients even said to me, Joe, do you keep your room so cold for therapeutic reasons? I said, no, I'm just warm-blooded. But then I got this heater on, and we're good. Okay, so yeah, most of the people online are saying that a bank teller should follow protocol. And again, when you call a bluff like that, usually they are lying, and people can get hurt. And that's our responsibility, to follow that protocol. So my personal opinion is that he does deserve to be fired. I've worked in companies where, we have a policy. It's called a hands-off policy. So if a client does anything, unless it's self-defense, the client's hurting you. Like, you do not touch a client. You call the police. And I've been in an agency where we actually had one incident where something happened, and basically everybody tried their best to respond accordingly. My secretaries have pepper spray. Although I tell them not to deploy it unless it's a literally emergency, because A, oftentimes, it could end up backfiring and spraying yourself, and B, you get into all these legal issues, and you have to be very careful. But the bottom line is that everyone needs to feel safe where they are. A lot of agencies nowadays have, security cameras or security guards, and sometimes you just need that. But as you see from the progression, it becomes more and more hazy as we go through. Clearly, a woman defending herself, and then a judge taking the law. You saw that video?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
trying to ask the question.
Oh, sorry. Welcome back.
So what happened to her? So did
In
she
which
ever,
case?
the lady that beat the guy stepping
nothing.
outside of her car?
Nothing happened there. The police were happy.
Okay.
Okay. My father is a black belt, and I've grown up with karate and self-defense, and he's a little scrawny, to say the least, and he was riding his bike one time, and basically this car surrounded him, and two guys got out and tried stealing his bike. And he had just bought this bike. It was an expensive, 21 speed bike, and he was doing it for exercise. The doctor told him to lose some weight. And he was like, I'm not buying another $300 bike. And he assessed the situation. One of them had a knife, and the other one had nothing. And he literally knocked the two of them out. And after he beat them up, he looked up and he saw a gun pointing at him. He was like, okay, I'm not going to take on a gun. It was a cop. A cop had drove by, saw this fight, and he says to my father, hands up. So my father says, it's not what it looks like. They're trying to rob me. So the cop says, okay, I believe you. So he calls in their license plate. They were driving a stolen car, and they had stolen stuff. So they said, oh, thank you. We appreciate you, you helping us get these guys. So the cops are very happy. He sent one of them to the hospital. And legally, he had to press charges against them because they were trying to sue him. So he pressed charges against them, and they went to court, and they both, each of them had to repay everything they stole. So, so you have to be careful. Sometimes things happen, and we try to defend ourselves because it's fun. It's never good to be physical. But again, I think when I asked my dad, I remember my father came home. I was very young when it happened, and his arm was hurting him. He said his arm was hurting him. I said, what happened? He said, whatever, something happened. I fell off my bike. And then, my mother told me later, like, the cop showed up at the door to try to get a testimony from him. And I was like, oh, cool. There are times to be physical, and there are times that we need to protect ourselves. But overall, if we could stay nonviolent, I think it's a lot better. And certainly, we should not be laying our hands on clients. And if a client throws a chair at you, in my opinion, you have a right to refer them elsewhere for services. Okay, cool. It's a little slow on the uptake sometimes on the webinar part. Let's see if anybody else has any other questions. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so I like that introduction because that's what we deal with in ethical dilemmas. Okay, now let's define ethical dilemma. You've kind of seen it. What is it? So in my opinion, this is a little bit football. This is nothing to do with the NFL because I know some people are boycotting them, but this is just a general football game because I like football. Okay, so it's a situation that occurs when two moral, professional, or values clash with one another. Okay, classic example. You have your 15-year-old client who disclosed to you that she smokes weed, and she says you can't tell my parents. Okay, so you have a breach of confidentiality and client trust on the one hand, but then you have, the other hand, your obligation. She is a minor, and they have a right to demand whatever they want to demand. So what do you guys do in a situation like that? Just think about it. It's a hard one. It's not comfortable. What do you do?
I would be upfront with my client, say you're minor, and anything you share with me, if your parents requested, I have to.
Okay.
From the very first appointment.
Good. So you're the preventative model,
Right.
and that's very important. And when you work with minors, especially 13 to 17, and 17 already, some states will give a little bit of rights as an adult. I had a client that was 17, disclosed a lot of things, and turned 18. It's also an ethical dilemma. Now what? Because she was 18. Okay, but I always tell the parents and the client from the first session and onward that I say to the client, I want you to know that anything you tell me, your parents have a right to access the notes, and they do have a right to ask me. And I'm going to ask your parents to please respect your right to tell me things in privacy and not to exercise that. So now they've seen that I've advocated for them, but they also know their mom and dad, and they know that she's not going to listen or he will listen, and they can now act accordingly. But in a situation like this, where I actually dealt with this recently, where a client was smoking weed, and he was a little younger than this age, and I felt it was very important for his mother to know, and I had had that conversation with him, and he knew that, but he kept telling me, don't tell her. And so I called the mother after the session, and I said, go into his room and open the top drawer, which is where he claims his weed is kept, and catch him. Because she wanted to know, and she said, I want to know about sex, and I want to know about drugs, and that's it. Okay, so the sex part, I suspect there's something going on, but he won't talk to me about it, and so I have no reason to say anything, and she knows that, and I know that. We're both on the same page. And the drug part, he disclosed it to me. He said to me, do not tell my mom. And I said, I look at you and I can tell. And your mom can look at you and can tell too. He said, I know, but if I can get away with it a little longer, it's fine. And she went home and she caught him. And now it has nothing to do with me. So we did a session together and we're able to talk about it, Now, there are some parents that don't care. His mom's supposed to weed. Maybe she doesn't care, That's not the case here, but I'm saying I've dealt with that too. So when we get into these ethical dilemmas, the preventative model is very important. Always try to have an upfront conversation. If you do couples work, anybody here do couples work? Okay, so I always tell every couple the same thing when I meet with them. I say to them, we're all sitting in the room together, the three of us now, right? So anything we talk about in public is public knowledge, and anything you tell me in confidence between one another is private. Now, you might tell me something really important, and I'm going to tell you, I think it's really important that your spouse knows about that, or we're not going to be able to, make progress. But that's your choice. That's your responsibility, and I'll encourage you, but I am not responsible for you. And a lot of times I've run into problems where clients say, well, you knew about this affair that was going on for longer than I knew about it. Most of the time it comes out, etc. Or clients will say, well, why didn't you tell me this? And I'll say to them, remember, I have a relationship with each of you individually. And by the way, if you do couples counseling, I think it is very important to meet with clients individually as well to get a full picture. And I know there are a lot of marriage and family therapists that disagree with this approach, and I respect that. And they can come to my marriage and family session, and I'll explain to them on that training why I say that. But I think from my experience, I always spend time individually with clients because I think it's the only way that we can make progress. Yes. So what was your first name again?
Monifa.
Oh, so I got your name correct?
Yes. And
okay,
then
fine.
I got it wrong.
And then
I typed it.
Yeah.
Correct pronunciation, but I don't know if it came through.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, I'm not great with that. But question,
Yes.
I work with low-income families in Baltimore City. We send therapists in the Baltimore City public schools.
Yeah.
A lot of the families, the reason why we get the referrals in the first place is because the parents are involved in addictions.
Yeah.
A lot of challenges, of course, with that. So, with that being said, what do you do with students or children who are in therapy who come from homes with addictions where the parents need just as much help as the children? What do you do with that information? Do you still have a duty to notify?
So as long as your duty is to your client, so you're dealing with, and I did a stint in Baltimore City public schools as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Booker T. Washington, if you know that school.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I had a lot of fun there, and I learned a lot, but
Okay.
it's a rough school. There was
Mhm.
a kid there whose mother was hurting him very badly, emotionally, and eventually we had to report the case. But basically what happened was I came to see him the third day of school, and he was crying. He was 12 years old, and he says, I don't have any food. And I said, well, the school has a free lunch. He says, no, Mom won't sign it. She told me the first day of school, you bring home whatever you need, and I'll sign it. After that, it's your problem. So I said, give me the paper, I'll sign it. I brought him to the principal's office, and I signed it as his guardian, because legally I'm allowed to. I'm just testifying that he has low income. He's on Medicaid. I can testify to that. He got it from the state. And I gave it to the principal. I said, this kid needs lunch.
Yeah.
And we took care of it. But, eventually, this kid came to my office with his mom, basically sat here like this, because his mom was just whacking the back of his head repeatedly every time he was talking to me. And eventually, like I said, when something came up and had to be reported, he was put into foster care. So these are problems. Your responsibility is the client. Is the client okay? Is the client being hurt? If the client is okay and you have no indication of being hurt, then you just keep working with the client. Whenever I work with the child, I always say to the parents, I think we could do 50 to 75% of all of our work between you and me.
Mm-hmm.
If the parent, has an attitude of like, hey, let me help, That's great. You have a conversation with them about addiction. You know, Johnny's telling me that he's finding pills in your room and he's taking your drugs. You know, is that true? Can we do something about it? It could be abuse and neglect in certain cases, in which case, you know, you're obligated. But, you know, in this clinic, we work with a lot of kids. We have a joke, we call them the drop-offs. They're not drop-offs, so the parent just says, fix my kid, and they run. Those we're not very successful with because we help them for 45 minutes, and then they go back into the same dysfunctional environment. Most of our clients that work with us, we've been able to weed out and really get the ones that are interested. Now, it doesn't mean that other people don't need services, but we tell the parents straight out that it's a 75% partnership between you and I, and we really need your help if we're going to make this happen. And so what I would look at working with kids is this kid safe, or is there something I need to report? And if this kid is not safe, then I don't have a choice. I need to report it. And if parents have some dysfunction, then let them come in, let me talk to them. I'll try my best. Maybe I can provide them services with Medicaid. You know, we used to do family sessions. The clinic I worked for, they were into if you're going to go to the school, get 10 sessions out of it. So I would see 5 kids, and then I would pull the 2 brothers together, and that was a family session. Or sometimes I would meet a parent there, and that was a family session if I was able to get them to come to school. Generally, they weren't very cooperative. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, so ethical dilemmas are when 2 things clash that contradict. Self-defense versus this man's right to live. So my self-defense is that I can shoot you in the leg to get you out of my car. Your right to live is that I really shouldn't kill you, but you have no right to be drunk and stealing from my car. Self-defense is I need to make sure that as a judge that you're not running away and you're getting justice, but I also don't have a right to kill you or take away from your autonomy and respect, but at some point that kind of goes out the window. And self-defense is I have a right to protect the bank, but the managers have a right to say that you actually endangered the bank. And that's really, really important, as far as training. And I think in that case, it was in the manual, and it was very clear that that man had no right to do what he did. And anyone that works for a bank is aware of that from my research and my understanding. And so I think he did do something wrong that potentially, could have killed a lot of people or hurt a lot of people. Okay? One of the ethical dilemmas that people like to talk about is the trolley problem. So we'll just do a drop of this. We got about 10 more minutes in this segment, and we'll take about a 5-minute break. If anybody needs the restroom, I suggest to start going now because there's only one in the office. And our 2 partners, the dental office and the pediatrician next door, usually let us use their restroom, but they're not open on Sunday.
A runaway train is heading towards 5 workers on a railway line. There's no way of warning them, but you're standing near a lever that operates some points. Switch the points, and the train goes down a spur. Trouble is, there's another worker on that bit of track too, but it's 1 fatality instead of 5. Should you do that? Many people think the right thing to do would be to switch the points, to sacrifice 1 to save 5, since that produces the best outcome possible. Now imagine the train heading for the workers again. This time it can only be stopped by pushing a very large man off a bridge. His great bulk would stop the train, but he'd die. Should you do that? Most people say no. But why not? Both thought experiments are cases of sacrificing 1 to save 5. What the trolley problem examines is whether moral decisions are simply about outcomes or about the manner in which you achieve them. Some utilitarians argue that the 2 cases are not importantly different from each other. Both have similar consequences, and consequences are all that really matter. In each case, 1 person dies and 5 are saved, the best option in each harrowing situation. But lots of people say they would switch the points, but they wouldn't push the man off the bridge. Are they simply inconsistent, or are they onto something?
Okay. Any thoughts, questions on that? I mean, those are horrible ethical dilemmas. Yes.
I feel like a terrible person, but I don't think I'd switch it over because if I deliberately switched it and killed the 1 person, then I'd actually feel like I killed him. Where the 5 people, I had nothing to do. I know. I could see where someone could totally, totally disagree with me, and I totally hear the 5 for 1, but I just don't think that's what I would choose.
Because you would actually be taking.
I feel like I would be killing.
Right. So for some people, that would be a problem to proactively kill someone.
I'd have to pick which one then.
Right.
Yeah. Push the guy off the bridge, or
Yeah.
And when you're actually in that position, you could totally change your mind. And I hear the other argument.
Agreed. It's very traumatic as well. I met a woman one time. I'm Jewish, obviously. They haven't figured it out. And she was a Holocaust survivor, And basically her story was very tragic, among other things. But one of the things that happened to her was that when the Nazis came to her specific village, they rounded up the whole village, and she had 2 children. And they grabbed both of her children away, and she was screaming. And this is very, very traumatic, obviously. And she was screaming, begging them. So finally, one of them turned to her and said, "Fine, pick one." And she passed out at that point, and she woke up in the camps. And she said she doesn't regret not saving one because she would have lived her whole life thinking that she killed the other. So it's a horribly traumatic situation no one should ever go through. As therapists, we never have any of those ethical dilemmas. Maybe if you're in a hospital setting, you're dealing with some end-of-life care or other things which are hard. And
still, this is way beyond.
That's beyond trauma and beyond.
Yeah,
so yes, that trolley dilemma is a big problem. If we have time at the end, I'll show you part of the ethical dilemma of the trolley is autonomous cars, because autonomous cars are pre-programmed to kill you. Let's say you're coming down the street and there's a bus, and either you're going to hit the bus and knock them off the cliff, or you're going to swerve and die. So, as a human being, I don't know whether you would have to make a decision like that or whether you're capable of making a decision like that, but your autonomous car would be pre-programmed by an ethicist that would say whether it should kill you or not. Or maybe you'd have to put on the switch of, I'm in the mood to die today, or I'm not feeling like a martyr today. And this is a very big ethical dilemma among many other problems that, that comes up. So, Sophie's choice, right. So there's evoking a lot of things. Okay.
Think of like Final Destination. It's not my choice to
do
either.
Right, exactly. And sometimes we'd rather, be passive and just let fate kind of ride out, or sometimes we'd rather, make a choice proactively.
But I mean, being passive, I think, is a choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes
there's no good answer there. There's no trauma-free solution there.
Right. There's no, there's survivor's guilt, and then there's personal guilt, and as therapists, we struggle with that. Not to feel guilty about decisions that we make. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have difficult clients that we're not helping, and we need to get rid of them and move them on. Sometimes we keep them. My rule is if a client keeps coming back, you're obviously doing something, but that's just a thought. Okay, what's the purpose of ethics? So I think we've touched on them kind of intellectually, but I want to get very, very clear on what is the purpose of ethics. I'm going to skip that video because we're on the schedule. So 6 purposes of ethics I think are very helpful to keep in mind, and I think you've seen these from everything we've talked about. They help protect you. They protect the consumers. So when a client comes to see you, they know that you're licensed by the state, and therefore they feel confident that you don't want to lose your license. You paid a lot of money for it. You got a lot of education. You do these trainings. I mean, we pay hundreds of dollars a year, if not thousands, for some of us, and we've invested tens of thousands of dollars in our life into this. And so when a client says to me, I'm a life coach as well, and I believe there's a time and place for life coaching, and I like doing that. But at the same time, when a client says, well, what's the difference between life coaching and therapy, I say it's very simple. One of them, I could put up a sign and I could be a life coach tomorrow, and I could lose it, and I don't really care. And there's almost nothing unethical you could do that will make you lose it because it's not regulated, even if you claim that it is, and I took a program, right? But a therapist, I'm accountable to 20,000 colleagues in Maryland, and I'm accountable to the boards that I'm part of that license me and that regulate what I do. To me, that's a huge difference. Okay, aside for the people that I'm working with that I'm accountable to, so it protects the consumers that they know that you are licensed. And a purpose of the code of ethics is the same thing. And so if I were to tell you, well, in that bank they went over 5 main policies, and one of them was sexual harassment and abuse, and the other one was protecting the bank from robberies, and this is the protocol. I think we're going to stop having so much sympathy and empathy for this guy and say, you didn't follow the code. So I don't really care if you disagree with it. If you don't agree with that code, then don't work there. Okay? Do we agree with everything in the code? Some of the most touchy things are, let's say, dealing with homosexuality, or, since in the last 20 years and certainly in the last 5 years, a lot of people don't like the code. If someone comes for reparative therapy, they don't like what the codes say about that. And by the way, reparative therapy is allowed, by the way. It's not considered unethical, although it is unethical for you to impose it on someone. Okay? So there's certain parts of the code or end-of-life decisions, which you might be dealing with in your setting, that people don't like it. You got to promote the welfare of the client, but sometimes welfare is the client wants to die. So you might not like the code, but you don't have a choice because this is who's licensing you. And I actually know a marriage and family therapist. This is very uncommon, but at the end of his career, he retired, and I asked him to speak at one of my presentations, and he said, well, I'm not a licensed therapist anymore. I said, why not? He said, I gave up a licensure. I don't want it anymore. I actually want to help people. So that's what he said. So he felt very strongly about being regulated.
Wow.
It wasn't because he never, he had a 45-year career. He was never cited, never did anything wrong. But that was his opinion. I can't argue with it. I hear that. If you don't want to be limited by it, then stop taking insurance and stop being bound by it. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm bound by the LCPC board, and you're bound by the Social Work Examiners board, and this course is bound by it as well. Quite frankly, so it protects the consumers. Okay, number two, it shows that you know a certain amount, that you've learned a certain standard and have gotten here. You can feel more confident when your clients come to you that you are licensed, whatever level you're licensed on. It tells your clients that you have, like I was saying, you have education. So it's not just you're regulated by them. It means that you've accomplished a certain amount to get that certification. Okay, they're a professional identity. They show you're part of a certain group, and they show who you are and who you affiliate with. And we'll talk about, there's tons of boards that you could join, and there's tons of boards of ethics, and there's all types of codes out there, and they're all basically the same. Don't hurt the client, and protect them, and be proactive in making sure that the client gets what they need. They show you that your behaviors are going to be part of that profession. I think it's really important to be licensed. Certainly, people that have ethical violations against them should join an ethical board, the ACA, the APA, the NASW, which you'll be hearing a lot more about that in the next segment. It connotes that you recognize that there's something that needs to be done to show that you're a part of that group. They offer a framework for difficult questions. For example, if you have an ethical dilemma and you are in private practice, you call the ACA, you call the APA, anything that you're a member of, and you can become a member that day. And you could utilize their ethical decision-making process by talking to a live person. And I've had times where I've called them, and we've used them, and we'll talk about documentation. Always write down your process for things. I literally, Thursday night we had a situation where we had to document something that happened, whatever it was. That one's too fresh. I don't want to give away any client information, but it's the same idea. A ethical question that comes up, and then a decision-making process that takes place between, in this case, two supervisors that were dealing with the case, what we told the clinician to do, and how the clinician handled it very well and documented everything, so that if anything ever happens and we get called, this is exactly what happened. And I have my note, she has her note, and we're good. Okay, so we're bound by that framework. And the last thing is that in cases of litigation, it's a defense that protects you because, hey, I'm part of the APA, I'm part of the ACA, I'm part of the NASW, and what I did is according to their ethical standard. You might not like their ethical standard, but I follow their ethical standard. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay? So it's a little bit long-winded, but the bottom line is that I think there's a big benefit of being a licensed therapist, and I think that certainly if there's any ethical violations or issues, you should definitely join a membership group. And quite frankly, if you're looking for other opportunities to grow, sometimes it's worth being part. And if you have an ethical question, then join them for a year and you'll see. I read a lot of the things from the ACA and the APA. Yeah, I do it because I'm a manager and I want to know what the trends are, and because I want to make sure that our CEUs are the most cutting and up to date. Yeah, of course, it's true. You have a question?
I just had a comment, but go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I went to another ethics training, and they were saying that NASW, if you remember, they have a whole section of approved legal, forms. Like, I'm in private practice, yes. So as far as your confidentiality form, your basic contract, your payment agreement, and they have forms that are, totally, approved by them.
Yes.
So that covers you instead of, me trying to piece together,
right.
My own.
Yeah.
And I let my membership lapse, and then you just reminded me that I need.
Gotcha. Well, sometimes you can find them online for free before you spend money. Mm-hmm. We developed ours based on we purchased a package for $100 online, and we got it, and then we got audited because we accept Medicaid, and they always come in and they want as much money as they can get back, and we did very, very well. But they literally give you a list of everything that they require on there, and every company has. And I think that they did the one complaint they had with our intake is that one of the ethical obligations is that you need to describe in writing the risks and benefits of therapy. Mm-hmm. So our line was too neutral. They said, it basically just said, therapy is not for everyone. It doesn't guarantee results. They wanted it to list more risks. So we changed it. I mean, you have to submit a PIP, performance improvement plan. Thank you. See, I haven't done this in a while. we haven't gotten any complaints recently. But basically, in that plan, we just changed it to that we will that therapy can be emotionally challenging for people, and it can bring up negative feelings. Okay, and then that's it. They're happy with it. So sometimes it's just nitpicky things that you just learn, but sometimes it's real, problems like you need to disclose fees and you need to produce a record. And if you read through the code once and you just hold your intake form, I think you're good to go. We'll talk a little bit more about private practice in the last segment. I'll give you some other suggestions because I've spent the majority of my career in private, and I love private. I don't like public. Any other questions or comments? Okay, and then Allison is saying that there's a private practice. Look at Simple Practice, which is the online one. We actually like Therapy Notes, which is also very good. They're pretty awesome instead of the NASW, and they also have HIPAA compliant forms. So again, if you look online, you'll find them. And you definitely don't want to run into a case where you have to evoke it. But one thing's for sure, whatever you are using, save it. So we're a paperless office. We scan everything and we just upload it, and it's saved. Okay? A couple of the ethical dilemmas that we're going to deal with are going to be Sally, who's in a healthcare setting. And we'll come back to this because I want to make sure we have enough time to do everything else. But we'll deal with her. Basically, she's 86 years old. She's very ill. And her son, who has permission to talk to you, basically says that the doctors let you know that her cancer is not curable and she's basically dying. Well, here she is complaining and saying that I feel terrible. Tell me what's going on over here. Tell me something. And the son is saying that if you tell mom that she's dying, she's going to be devastated. So don't tell her. This is an ethical dilemma. Okay, there might be a simple answer. There might not be. You might have a strong opinion about it, right? But this is an ethical dilemma that comes up. We're going to deal with a couple of them. So we'll deal with a child one. We'll deal with a unemployed person. We'll deal with this all at the end. I want to make sure we stay on time. We'll deal with marriage and family therapy. We'll deal with the old gifts. We will try to come up with an appropriate response when we get gifts. And then we'll deal with something that actually happened to me, which was not exactly this case, but where I went into a store to buy something and my client worked there and was more than happy to make money off of me, in his own words.
Get his own money back.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break just to air out, and you guys have survived the first segment, so congratulations. And we'll move on to the second segment in 5 minutes. If anybody online has any questions or wants to talk now, you can let me know, and I'll be happy to put you live and we can talk.
Stacy.
Yeah. Is the membership a minimal fee? What's the approximate amount for
NASW? You'd have to check because it's been a
Yeah,
couple years since I was a member. I'm sorry.
For a year. Yeah.
For 1 year?
They're all 1 year.
Okay.
They have different membership types if you look online.
They always offer the CEUs online. Like I get all my categories.
There's a
The
lot
category
of
2 are free.
I couldn't afford it when I first went into private practice, so I let it lapse.
Here, it says it's $225 for the first year, but if you're a BSW, it's $150. And they also have a student membership. But what I can tell you is that if you call them up and tell them that you're a first-year sign-up, they'll probably give you a discount. So, hey, I've never joined you before and I'm curious. Some of them give you 25, 50% off. Some of them will just say, too bad. It just depends on when I used to be part of all of them and then I kind of consolidated.
Is that for social workers only?
This is for NASW. You can join them with anything. They'll take your money.
Okay.
But I recommend, what are you?
Second associate.
So what type of degree do you have?
I have a master's degree in human services, and I've been a therapist working under a psychologist.
So a psych associate?
Yeah.
So
That's through the Maryland Board of Psychology. Yeah.
Okay. So I would try to join one that's relevant to your practice field because they're going to have more regulations. The cool thing is when things change, they let you know. So I have a friend who's an NASW, so he just forwards me their announcements. Not like their paid content, but just like their, we're changing this code that I need to know.
I'm getting my PsyD now. So you think I should do one for a psychologist?
Where are you getting your PsyD?
CEUs might not train. I don't know if their CEUs are the same for psych associates.
I'm not worried about that. Especially if it's a type B. Type B, everything's accepted. But my opinion is that it's better to be part of whatever you're, going for.
Okay.
So, for example, Dr. Michael Friedman owns this company, right? So he has a doctorate in social work, basically. But he's not a psychologist, even though he's a doctor and people think he is. But so he's part of the NASW because he's a social worker.
That's a challenge I have. I have a doctoral degree as well.
So where are you going for it? What place?
For my PsyD?
Yeah.
Walden.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you'll be able to get a license here in Maryland with them?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So
I'm not even seeking my license. I've been running outpatient mental health clinics program for the last 14 years.
So you don't care. You don't even need that. You just want the education.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then I would just go with what your license is. So if you're a psych associate, then I would go for that board. That's what I recommend. But I mean, the codes are very, very similar. The codes are all very similar. I'm not so familiar with. I know there's some organizations like for forensic psychology or other things. I'm not sure what they have. I don't know so much about psychology.
We fall under RMAC, outpatient mental health.
Right. Okay. So it could be there's there's literally organizations for everything. People open up NAMI and AMCA and ACA and APA, art therapists and trauma therapists. I mean, I get these things in the mail. You literally could spend thousands of dollars being part of them. Like I'm part of MDRE, which is EMDR therapy, and somatic experience. Literally, you could literally spend $5,000 a year on memberships. If there's a benefit that you get out of it, then fine. If not, then what's the point?
Right.
That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. That's what I tell everybody that talks to me. Okay, let me just see if anybody else has any questions online here.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I did 2 here. One I said yeah, and then the rest I just
Oh yeah, everything, please. Guys, make yourself comfortable.
Do you do a lot of trainings on Sundays?
This one, everyone asked for it, so we did it.
Yeah.
But I think we're probably going to start moving towards Sunday.
I work on Saturdays, so
Oh, really?
I never do. And during the week, my schedule's pretty packed.
Wow.
With clients, so I was like, ethics on Sunday. It's like perfect.
Right. The ethics one people love on Sundays and afternoons, so that we always do.
Like I would come to all of them on Sunday.
Okay, cool. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
We're looking at probably starting in April, about once a month, Sundays. So that's what people like. Although some of them might be at the library. We're getting a larger flow of people. This company is 6 months old. So we've all been giving trainings elsewhere, and then we're just like, why don't we just come together and just do it ourselves?
Yeah.
So, we enjoy what we're doing. Okay, any questions online? No. Okay. I know it's it's the mirror image back and forth. Okay. Part 2. Here we go. How we doing? You guys are surviving?
Yeah.
I always joke around that there's a dentist right next door. So I always say, if our clients feel like we're pulling teeth with them, we have a dentist right next door. Okay, now we're going to talk about ACA and NASW. And again, I don't get any money from them, and I don't have any personal, vested. I'm not going to send out a link where I make money off them either. I just think it's worth to be part of some organization. So I think it's worth mentioning. All right, so everybody back online here? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So the 2 main codes of ethics we're going to talk about today, and again, on the printouts that I have in the room, we saved paper because it was 85 pages. But if you go online, just click on CorewellCEU.com, and then just click on this course, and you will see all the handouts there, and it has all the ACA and the whole NASW, the whole 9 yards. It's COMAR, Code of Maryland something laws, articles, regulations, or something. So that's the Maryland law that goes through the psychologist one, and there's also the Maryland law that goes through social worker one. Okay, again, like I mentioned before, there's no limit to how many boards there are. You could be part of all these boards. You could pay, they're usually about $100 a year, and you could get membership fees for all this stuff. And what's the point? You don't need all that. Okay, in my opinion. But find one. So the ACA is a very classical one, American Counseling Association. They own counseling.org, so you can tell they've been around for a long time because that's a pretty good website to own for a therapist. And they are located in the Washington, Virginia area. And I'm not going to bore you with all their history, but basically 1952 they got together. Psychology was focused on vocational psychology and assessing soldiers and IQ tests, and they kind of realized that we're going to be doing a lot of counseling psychology and helping people. And so they've started this organization in order to be able to promote counseling. And I think they've done a good job. They do a lot. Some people go to their trainings. Their conferences are very interesting. And they've been updating the Code of Ethics for many years. So the most recent one, and they're probably due for another one, quite frankly, is the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics. And again, that's in the handouts. I think it's worth reading every once in a while. Obviously I read them a lot, but, because you go to them and you look up things. I always have a copy on my computer, and I just push Control Find, and I write you kind of know the phraseology. And also there's 9 sections on it, which I'll go through with you just to give like an overview of what to look at. This is the only nitty gritty part of ethics training, just to kind of get in some of the codes. And you could download that for free, so do not pay for it. There are some sites that try selling it to you. It's like buying the Brooklyn Bridge. Okay, don't fall for it. Okay, so the main areas, which are obviously very important, are they define the counseling relationship, so between you and the client. They define your responsibility for confidentiality, and I'll get more into examples of what I mean by that at the end of the training when we go through like literally the practical part. They define your professional obligations. That's mostly finances and just what you're doing, so not working outside of your competency. They define your relationship with other colleagues in the field. One ethical dilemma that I once had to deal with was someone that felt their colleague was incapacitated and unable to perform services. And when I spoke to this person at length, they called and I was supervising them, and I said, well, you don't really like that guy, right? Right. So you're probably not the most unbiased person to make a decision, but he was, so convinced that he was doing the right thing and it was an ethical obligation. And I said, well, why don't you talk to a few of the colleagues that work there and just see what you think? And, he refused to do it. So sometimes we have to be careful. We confuse our pretend ideals with our ethics. Although I think most of us are okay. Evaluation, assessment, and data interpretation. If you're using your own assessment tools, you should be disclosing that to the clients. And if they're not research-based, that's important. So one of the things all these things should be covered in your intake forms as well. If you work for an agency, what I find is that your intake forms are ridiculously long because they're trying to like make everybody happy. And like the client, one agency I worked for downtown, we had an intake coordinator. He was actually an unlicensed person who literally would just sit for an hour and just have the client digitally sign the hundreds of pages that this agency was trying to protect itself with. And the clients hated it, and everyone hated it, and we got no information whatsoever. It was literally just a client saying, oh, great, I get to get an intake now, and they weren't even talking about their problems. They were just signing their name digitally 1,000,000 times. All right, so that's a little bit not helpful. I always like doing my intakes. You learn a lot about your clients. When I worked in the methadone clinic, we opened up at 5:30 a.m. every morning in order to facilitate people being in the workforce. So I'm doing an intake at 5:45 a.m. and I say to the guy, name, date of birth, phone number. I don't have a phone. Email, nothing. Address. He says to me, come here. Stand up. It shows me out the window. There was a 7-Eleven right across the street from me, and there was a bench there. He goes, what's the address there? I said, okay. Wow. So if the intake, I can just imagine my clinic where the other one I worked in, if like he just would have wrote like 7-Eleven bench, Dundalk, Maryland. I said, oh, so you need housing? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so we can work. There's things that come up in the intake. Okay, so we try to make sure that we evaluate and assess the client for what they need, and we use appropriate scales. And some people like to use quick assessment tools. I think it's always good to protect yourself to have 1 or 2 assessments in there. I use the ACE, which I use for trauma, but that's not very clinically proven to show depression or anxiety, even though there's correlations, and I talk all about the ACE, and it's an awesome document. But there are other ones that you could use. A lot of agencies offer them that are literally just a quick anxiety or depression or bipolar assessment, which I think is very good for you to have that. If you want help finding them, I'm happy to help you. I can tell you some of the things I use. But for now, I just want to say that I think it's good to have something to, back you up. If an insurance company ever audits you and says, well, why did you see this person for 43 sessions? You claim that they're depressed. Could you prove it? Well, the client reports that she's feeling really sad. So you really want to be able to protect yourself and fill out an assessment form with them, or even without them. You could answer all the questions yourself based on talking to the client. Although a lot more comes out if you actually talk through with them. Even a 10-question, assessment, quick assessment could be helpful. Supervision, training, and education responsibilities. Most of us kind of go through that while we're doing our training, and we kind of just stick with it. Research and publication. This is really important. You can't do experimental things on clients. If you think you have something, when I was first learning EMDR, I would disclose to the clients, I have a lot of good skills, I can help you. I just learned EMDR, I'm not certified in it. Can we try it together? Bilateral stimulation and different things. And most of my clients liked it. Some of them didn't. And in retrospect, the reason they didn't like it is because I was triggering them or not doing a good job with it for some of the time, and I need to disclose that to them. In some of my trainings, I've wanted to get clients recorded so I could have recorded sessions. So you obviously cannot record a client without getting their written permission. I feel, and this is beyond ethics. This is just morals. Whenever I've recorded clients, usually it's because I'm giving free therapy. Not always. Sometimes I ask, especially in couples. A couple will call and say, we can't afford it, we want therapy. I'll say to them, I need it for training purposes. Do I have permission to record you? They sign a document. However, I feel, this is my opinion, that I disclose to them from the beginning that if at the end of the 5 sessions that we do together, which I'm recording, you tell me that you are not comfortable with me sharing this with other people in training, then I will not charge you, and I will delete them and get rid of them. However, if at the end of the 5 you sign the document that says that I am comfortable and I understand what I'm consenting to, then once I put that into a training, I can't pull it out of the next one because I need to know what's going on. But if you contact me and you say you changed your mind because your best friend was out of training, obviously I'm going to pull that one out. That's my moral thing. But ethically, if you have the documentation, you're good to go. Okay, I've never had a problem with that. I only had one person that ever did that, and I don't think she was taking advantage. I think she just literally wasn't comfortable sharing it. I can respect that because I'm not comfortable sharing either. I don't want myself recorded. It's bad enough I have to look at myself giving you therapy. Imagine if I was the guy in the seat. Right? You understand. Okay, any questions online, feel free to type. Any questions in here? So that's basically what the ACA is looking for. And then virtual counseling and technology, which we'll spend a little bit of time at the end, that's a really, really important fad, so to speak, but it's becoming more and more popular. How many of you have had experience working for any online virtual ones? 7 Cups or Talkspace?
I'm not a fan. I know some people are, but that's just not
Yeah.
at all what I'm ever going to do. So
Yeah.
I sort of avoid all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone online that ever had experience with that? The jury is out. I think that Talkspace did a great marketing job. I'm going to talk about them specifically. They can come sue me if they want. I did do a stint with them very quickly. I wanted to see what they were doing, to see, just kind of, I was curious. I did 6 months. It was very cool. I had clients in different countries until it became more regulated, and they're like, wait, this isn't really so ethical because we're doing distance training and you're not licensed to work in Egypt, so how are you a therapist in Egypt? Okay, or Sweden, or other things. But it was cool while that lasted. And then they said, wait, there's a problem here because you're not licensed to do therapy in California and you're licensed in Maryland. So then it became, you can only work with people in your state. But I found that about 25% of clients got something out of it, and the other 75% got almost nothing. They thought you were just like a text buddy. Talkspace also markets themselves as, and some of the other ones online do the same thing, as unlimited therapy. And it's not true. You're getting 5 minutes of therapy time. If you're paying $100 a month, you're getting 5 minutes, 5 days a week max. Okay, you could buy, now they upped it a little bit where you could actually buy talk time. But I had one client that I worked with for about 3 months or so, very cool client in Switzerland, and then Talkspace was pushing towards, they'll do some video chats, give free video chats, because then they'll buy it. We did one video chat, and from the moment that we made eye contact, the therapeutic session was over, because she was hiding behind her anonymity. That was the reason that she came there, okay? And she was hiding behind her anonymity, and the second that was violated, that's it. For her, it defeated the whole purpose of the therapy, for her. Now, it's not always the case. I had another case, which you could read about online, so that Talkspace doesn't come after me on this, where a client threatened suicide via text. That did not happen to me, but you could read about that online. There's online reviews about that type of situation. Even though all these sites, warn that if you're having a emergency, you need to, but here you have a guy who's in South Africa and he's claiming, you don't even have it. You have his, his Twitter name and it's it. You have nothing on him. How in the world, what are you supposed to do? So, like I said, there's been articles written about that, and they protected themselves very well because they have good lawyers, and it is what it is. And again, I think the trend is coming to some level. I've done many FaceTime sessions and other Skype sessions, and they are pretty cool and they are pretty effective sometimes. But I think, for me, that's like a backup plan. But you have to know there are virtual responsibilities. And even what I just said could have been an ethical violation because Skype and FaceTime are not HIPAA compliant. And so the client will need to sign that they're willing to do that. But the truth is that there are HIPAA compliant web cameras and other things that you can use now, which I recommend if you do this regularly, you can do. There's also a credential you can get, which is a distance counseling credential by the NCC. If you do this for a living, I would definitely think about it. What else was I going to say? I had one more thing I was going to add. So overall, I think the jury's still out about that, but I think that just like people are doing webinars, more and more, I think there is going to be a lot more virtual counseling. There was one point where so many people were coming in with the flu. We were like forget it. We're just going to do this digitally. It's not where you shake people's hands. When I worked in the methadone clinic, I never shook anyone's hand because you just didn't know what you were getting yourself into. But the truth is that people got me sick there too. I mean, we used to collect urine specimens from the clients. Okay, people spill things on you by accident, and it's like there are protocols that you're supposed to have, but in these methadone clinics, they don't really follow them. So when you're doing virtual counseling, I do think that is a big deal in the counseling world. Allison has a comment here. She wrote, I have college kids that I see via a Zoom group, but they come into the office when they're back home. And just they work before going off to college, right? I've had that as well. Sometimes it works really well, but if you have a client that's in crisis and then they go off to college, that is probably not going to work for them. If you have a client that's pretty stable and doing well, and then they go off somewhere else, it's great. I always transition my clients into different states, but I always tell them, I liked working with you, everything's great, but you're there, why don't you just work with them? But here's the worst part. Many of them want the insurance to keep paying, and the insurance won't cover for most of these sessions. So you really need to find out, how you're going to work that. That is very important. So thank you for sharing that. Allison wrote, I've been in practice for 20 years, so I'm comfortable with my boundaries and policies, and I'm sure to be part of a peer supervision group. Okay, and that's really important. I think peer supervision groups are really, really important. We have one as well where we work with clinicians. We have a client group and we have a peer supervision group. If you're interested, you could let me know. I think we have a new cohort forming in the next month. But I think it's very important to be able to talk to people. I have a supervisor. I don't need a supervisor, but I benefit from a supervisor. A supervisor is your own personal therapist, basically, who deals with your emotional problems and the baggage of what comes up when your client is reporting a 6-year-old daughter of theirs that got raped, and you're having your thoughts of, oh my God, is my daughter okay? Or where there's a case that's coming up that's triggering you, which is pretty normal because we have emotions and we're humans. So that's really, really important. And then the last one is just dealing with ethical issues. So the ACA, I think, is very comprehensive. And again, if you're a member, you could call them and ask. A lot of the insurance companies, if you actually read some of their newsletters that they send out, they also will try to deal with some ethical issues that come up, and sometimes they can really help you mitigate losses. And we'll talk about that in the last segment as well. Any questions or comments?
I have
Yes.
a question. So something came up. Okay, so the target population that we work with, traditional methods are not really great with just talking to a student at a high school smoking weed and having a problem with addiction. They traditional methods.
Absolutely.
So we come up actually with an undocumented technique. We haven't started it yet, but what we wanted to do was not, we bill Medicaid. So we wanted to do these sessions, not billing Medicaid, ask the family's permission to be a part of this new technique that's undocumented that we wanted to have measurable, outcomes for. So how does that work in ethics?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, the bottom line is that as long as you disclose, and in your intake form is going to say that we will not use methods that are not approved and that we are not competent in. And if we will disclose it to you. So as long as you disclose to them that, you're going to be part of this population, and we are going to be using a new technique, and here's the risks and here's the benefits, and you're at will. Those are the three main things: risks, benefits, and at will to drop out at any time without penalty. Then you would want to find a experiment, a group. Sometimes your college that you're part of will have I think it's called an IBS or IBR, I forgot what it stands for, but it's an internal review board that will look at anything that you're doing and tell you that's not ethical. You can't experiment on people that way, or that is ethical. One way that I get around it, whether this applies to you or not, when I'm doing a new technique and Medicaid won't pay for it, I don't accept Medicaid, but some of my clinicians do. So at one point, EMDR was not accepted by Medicaid, even though some of my clinicians do EMDR. And so when I spoke to the manager at Medicaid, he told me, look, if you write the entire session was EMDR, we're not covering it because that's our policy. Is what he told me. And I documented it. And if they ever come audit us, which they will because they come once a year, they like our bagels that we give them. So they come back. No, you got to feed them when they come. You don't want angry.
Stop feeding them.
No, I can't. I can't because the year that we didn't feed them was even worse.
Oh God.
So they come back. They want blood. So anyway, it's part of accepting Medicaid. So they said, if you document that the entire session was EMDR, then we're not going to accept that. But if you use other interventions that we approve of, which are CBT and other things, then it's fine. So we told all the clinicians, do whatever you want. Just make sure that it's a mix. You use some CBT in there and some EMDR, so they have something that makes them happy. Now, if you're trying to create a whole new program, that's not going to work because you're clearly doing something. You can try to call Medicaid. That's what I would do in
No,
a
I'm
gooch.
saying we don't bill Medicaid for those sessions.
Oh, so you don't, okay.
I'm talking about the ethical part because we're not billing Medicaid.
Then the ethical part is get approval by some board of some sort that's overseeing what you're doing, that it's not experimental or hurting them, and that it won't have a deficit on them. And then make sure that you have full disclosures that, again, the risks, the benefits, and the being there at will. That's what all the ethic codes say. Once you put that out, then it's fine. But, define what you're doing. You want to in general, we want to demystify what we're doing. I never want my client to think that I'm a magician and that's how I'm helping them, because then I'm doing them a disservice. They're going to walk out and think, gee, I need that magic guy again. You don't need anything. You need yourself. You need to believe in yourself. This isn't Peter Pan. I mean, this is real. You need to take the skills. I say this at every training. Okay, to me, all my clients come in, I tell them the same thing. Therapy is a washing machine. It's a washing machine. There's 2 ingredients that make a washing machine work. Okay, number 1, and people get sick of hearing this from me, but then they tell me they use it themselves. So I have no regret. People are writing, heard this already. I don't care. You're gonna hear it every time you're with me. Okay, because I think it's important. Number 1 is you got to put detergent in there. If you just dump clothes in there and you let them cook in their own juices, they're not going to smell very good. So you got detergent. Number 2 is you need agitation. It's got to agitate it in order to get the dirt out. Okay, so we give our clients life skills. That's detergent. There's something going on in their life. We need to give them life skills. You're an expert in your life, I tell them, and I'm an expert in life skills. So let me give you some, and you try using them and see if they work. Okay, and the agitation is sometimes it's going to hurt. I'm going to call you out. Whenever I start off, I say, this is where you are, this is where you want to get. You define where you are, you define where you want to get. It's not my view, it's yours. If you're moving that way, I'm going to pat your back and say you're doing great. And if you're moving that way, I'm going to call it out and say, hey, did we change the goal? Am I missing something? Because you're doing that. And you're not going to like it, but that's what I do. Okay, I do it gently and softly and respectfully, right? So that's what I try to do. I try to be a washing machine. So from an ethical standpoint, you're going to have to just justify that we're telling the clients clearly how we're doing the process. If there's any research that supports what we're doing, if there's any modalities that it overlaps with, I think that would help you and make you look a little bit better. But that's it. Look, how do we develop anything new without experimenting? But at the same time, we need to make sure that we are not taking advantage of the client where they don't know what they're doing. There's some joke about that where clients have a different word. There's a different word for them that means experiment, basically. I forgot what it is. But sometimes we use that experiment where we say, oh, well, let's see what happens.
Like a guinea pig?
No, but there's an actual word. Oh, yeah, it's called practice. They're in your practice. Well, that means that you're practicing. You don't know what you're doing. Yeah, kind of. Well, I'm just practicing.
You're learning.
Right. We are. And it's good. It's good to be humble and tell your clients, you want to put it on? Oh, okay. You could be in charge of the heater if anybody can.
Okay.
I guess, see, I've shed responsibility on the heat. Okay, so, right, we're just practicing. But we're really trying our best to help people. And I think, but the passion is very good, but it also needs to be mixed with skills and really making sure that we're up to par on the ethics and the codes. So that's what being aware of the ACA's code is very helpful. And again, read through it once, and I think 95% of it will either be not relevant to you, or I shouldn't say it like that. Let me say it like this. 25% of it will not be relevant to you because you're not doing supervision or you're not doing this or you don't do that. Okay. The other 70% will be relevant, but you'll already say I'm doing that perfectly fine. And the other 5% who's doing the math here? I think. Okay, we're good because us therapists are really bad at math.
I'm very bad at math.
Okay, well I got.
He's at 105%.
The other
5%, 75%.
Okay, so I meant
70.
Oh, okay,
so correct it to 70, right?
Okay.
So 25% you're going to say is nothing to do with me. I don't experiment. I don't supervise. I don't this. I don't that. I don't do home visits. Whatever. Okay, I don't take gifts no matter what. The other 70% you're already doing. Because you already know it. You have it in your bones. You got something out of college. That's the one thing you learn. Some ethics. Not skills, not marketing, not counseling. Nothing. But the one thing you got is you know some of the ethics that, maleficence and benevolence. I want to do good and not do harm. Okay, that you got.
Yeah.
And the other 5%, you're like, damn, I haven't been doing this. Okay, let me fix that quick before anyone notices. And they're not big deals, right? Even in the PIP, the Performance Improvement Plan.
Right.
There are things that are ethical violations that we've never had any of those. And there are things that are best practice that we would like to have more elaboration. That's fine. We don't have to disclose anything to a client. I had a supervisor I was working with one time, and he would write notes about our supervision about me because, like I said, he was basically a therapist. And his laptop got stolen from his office, And so he gave me a paper that he had to disclose. He spoke to the ACA, and in his case, his computer didn't have a lock on it, and he didn't use an EMR, electronic medical record, that had a lock on it, which we all do here for that reason. And he had to disclose that he was breached. And I would imagine if I was a client, I wouldn't be too worried because I'm sure the guy just stole, whatever that was in the office and wanted to resell it. But it doesn't feel very good to have to get a letter that says your information might be out there. I didn't have anything terribly private. I had many supervisors. We've all done our therapy for years. And we keep doing therapy because we want to work on ourselves, right? But I would imagine that a client would not be comfortable with that. And so, I think that I'm a pretty nice supervisor to the people that work here, but I am very, very annoying when it comes to clinical things. Like if there's any papers that are ever left out, ever, you're going to hear it from me because that's an ethical violation. Or, if secretaries go to the restroom, they need to lock their computer. I don't think anyone's going to steal it, but I don't want to have to write that letter that an unlocked computer of ours was stolen and, your information could have been breached because people trust us. And I never want that to happen ever. Okay, there was a billing company that I was using many, many years ago when I first started private practice, and it was a local billing company, and one of the employees who worked for the billing company said something to another relative of mine that they worked for the billing company and they billed for my company. So it's not an ethical violation, but why are you talking about things outside of business? It's not anyone's business. Who said I want that relative to know? It doesn't matter who they are. And this relative called me, and I made an inquiry, and I asked them straight out, and I called this person directly because I knew that I had interacted with her sometimes when we got stuck on billing, and I said, did this conversation take place? She said, yes. I said, well, you can't be on our project anymore. Well, I didn't say, I know you didn't have any ethical violations, but that's a breach of trust. You can't be talking about things. You're a small company, and it's a mom and pop company, and you guys did a good job, and you've taken all of our rejections. And basically, very shortly after, I said, that's it. We're doing everything in-house from now on because I need to be able to protect everybody. And that's what it is. In this community, most of my clinicians, we have 10 clinicians. We live in this area. We interact with people. We have a number of staff members. I've had cases where people come in the office and they say, I know your secretary. I don't want to be here when she's here. Okay, I can respect that. It's fine. It's not a breach of confidentiality. She will never talk to you about anything. Okay, but it doesn't matter. The point is that they're just not comfortable. So we have to be aware of our clients' comforts. Okay, so take those things serious. All right, last segment for this part, and then we'll take a 1 minute break, is the NASW. So this is put in here for the social workers. If anybody has any questions online, feel free to share. So the NASW is the National Association of Social Workers. I like them. They're a large organization that really focuses on promoting social welfare. So that's a really, really cool thing. They have their Office of Ethics, which also has a phone or email line that you could get in contact with. I've only dealt with them a few times for different stuff in the past. I found both the ACA and the NASW to be very, very responsive. Quite frankly, from what I understand, they're not fielding too many calls. People just don't have questions. It's like the saying that says, that those who ask already know the answer, and those who don't ask don't even know that they don't know. So, and that's why I try to, in the last segment especially, I try to bring up some things that you might not have thought of. Not that we're bad clinicians, but just kind of things that come my way. Okay, so in 1996, they redid their code of ethics, and then 2017 they did it again. So basically, there's 4 sections, and we'll go through just very, very briefly what they cover. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, because like I said, it's not all relevant. But basically, the preamble just explains what the mission is, right? So it's just some of the historical 7 years ago, right? It's just a little bit of a background. So basically, the mission of the social work profession is core values. The core values include the following, and we just go through: service towards others, social justice. I think that's a huge one that a lot of people pick up. Dignity and worth of each person who you're working with. Respect your clients. Importance of human relationships, not having dual relationships, etc. Integrity is the way you act, and competence is making sure that you actually are able to perform. We all think we're competent, right? But we need to make sure that we're competent. And then purpose goes through 6 core values, which we'll elaborate on. I won't bore you with all the details, but basically just go through a couple of quick examples. So what does service mean? It means that you're trying to help people in need and address real social problems. We love doing that. Social justice means you challenge social injustice that you see going on around you and you fix it. Okay? Worth of the person means that you respect people's inherent dignity and worth. And again, some end-of-life stuff will come up in that section specifically. The importance of human relationships is recognizing just how to develop proper rapport. We know that that's a big ingredient in in counseling as well. Integrity is how you act, being trustworthy. That's really important. People trust you. People really trust you with a lot, and you have a responsibility towards them. Don't let it get to your head. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing is confidence, working within the confidence of what you know and what you don't know. And what you know means what you've been skilled, what you've been taught, what you've learned, what you've read, what you've practiced. It doesn't mean what you think you want to know. Okay? I'm talking to myself. It doesn't mean what you think. You know, I can't help this client, but I'm going to try it anyway because my big heart will help. If you're not good at it, I don't do eating disorders. I know a lot about them, and I know the trauma part of them very well. It's just not. It's not my thing. Okay? But you bring me a 7-year-old kid who's scared of bees, I would love to work with that. Bring me a 50-year-old man who has a fear of crossing bridges, bring it on. I can help. Bring me anxiety, depression. You know, we know what we're good at. Okay? So we want to really get in touch with what we're good at. And then basically the Code of Ethics goes through these 6 sections. You can check it out there and you'll see it. What did I tell you? This is the old Benjamin Franklin. It all comes back to an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Preventative measures really save a lot. Okay, let's take a 1 to 3 minute break, and then we'll move on to the 3 preventative and 3 proactive models. And we should catch up in the next 2 minutes or so. Like I said, my commitment is that we will end. This is a 3-hour course. You don't have to suffer through anything longer than that with ethics. All right, I'm going to go stretch also for a minute. If anyone wants to do that.
Have you done any trainings with Lisa Ferrance?
No, she's awesome. She's amazing.
I went through her level 1,
trauma.
level 2,
Yeah, she's
and then
wonderful.
level 1 again.
Oh, yeah?
Actually teaching a class at her institute
Oh, cool.
in June. But I was just curious. She's
She's-
about Peter Levine and like that's.
Oh yeah, Pat Ogden. Yeah, those are my heroes.
She's awesome. I
Yeah.
highly
Lisa is a great clinician and
She
a
is.
great trainer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do monthly consults with her.
Oh wow,
And
very
it's
nice.
just it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like it's invaluable.
Cool. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's
Well,
awesome.
and good luck with your training.
Thanks.
One of
Yeah.
the coolest things about being a trainer is that when you stand up here, when you're a participant, you realize what you don't want people to do. I mean, I go through so many training. The truth is, I only go to good people now. You know, because I'm saying, like, I don't mean that as an insult, but like, you know, Peter Levine training, somatic experiencing, Pat Ogden, like, I try to go to the best because,
For sure.
you know, you just enough, if you want to learn it, you know,
Absolutely.
like I'm doing IFS now. Like, you do it with
Me
Richard
too.
Schwartz.
That's what I'm doing now.
It's very good stuff.
Amazing. I'm like
Yeah.
blown away by it.
Okay, cool. I just want to check if the secretary's here. Make sure I have everybody's forms filled out. Meaning, it's printed out properly. Sorry. I'll be back in 1 minute.
What's IFS?
Internal Family Systems. Have you heard of that? So it's like if you listen to people talking, you'll hear like, okay, part of me feels this way, another part of me feels this way. So the idea is that we all have parts, like normal parts, and some parts don't like each other, some parts are protective, some parts are more kind of young, like vulnerable feelings, and there's a whole complicated method to kind of working with these parts, helping the protectors kind of step to the side so that this person can heal kind of what's been protected.
I thought that was just called parts work.
It is, but the actual model
That's so
is called
cool.
internal family
Okay.
systems. Yeah, Lisa calls it parts work.
Okay, that's because I've taken.
Have you taken her class?
Yeah,
It's the same
What's
thing.
her name?
Lisa Ferrance, Ferentz.
Is she from here?
Yeah, her office is actually it's not. Sorry, she sees people in private practice from before. She doesn't see new. She's not taking new clients, but she started her own training institute for clinicians, and she has her trainings out of the Double T. Doubletree.
Doubletree. Yeah.
Not the Double T Diner, the Doubletree Hotel in Pikesville, right on Racerson Road, and that's where she does all her trainings. And she's just the best. Like I hardly ever go to any other training.
Do you have anything coming up?
Yeah. Go on her website, just lisaferrance.com.
Yeah, she has.
She has stuff all the time. She has 1-day things. She has half-day things. And then she has her like level 1 trauma training is a 9-month thing where you meet once or twice a month for a full day. And her level 2 is like another 9 months, same thing. So there's different levels of investment, and definitely, I mean, her ethics stuff is like super fun. She's very entertaining. She has a bachelor's degree in theater. So she's like very dynamic and funny, and like you're never bored, and she's got good food. So I highly recommend. I don't get a kickback for giving her.
And even if you did, good for you.
She's just awesome. I've learned so much this time. I've learned so much from her, and I started my private practice right when I started level 1 training with her, and it just like transformed when I had my vision of like what I was going to be doing.
Where's your
completely changed. Columbia.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
Yes.
It's on 32. Like, you know, the shopping center?
Yes.
It's like right down the street.
Oh.
And then all next summer. So I'm the only therapist there, but there's massage therapists and acupuncturists and Reiki and like all the.
I'm always like asking people, like even though I'm not working right now, because I'm with my daughter, like I always people like get texts or emails from someone's mom or aunt, and they're always like, "Who do you recommend?" And it's like, "Well, what's your?" You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
that's super
when
close. I mean, it is.
Right.
Yeah, Columbia, but it's not unreasonable. I have people come from there. Sure, and you should also wear business cards. Of course, I didn't.
Your first name was Stacy.
Stacy.
Okay, fine, perfect. So I have everybody's thing. I have yours.
Yeah,
I have yours printed out as well. Okay, we're good. If we have any,
It's REM. Until I get to okay, let's say that out loud. Okay, 410 206 8573. And my website is just my full name. Okay.
And your
full name, Stacy? What? My last name is Rempert. REMPERT. REM. Got it. Yeah. Okay.
all right. I love the networking.
Mm-hmm. I see people age 16 and up.
Welcome back, everyone. The secretary is here, so if we misspelled your name or anything, at the next break I'll show you what we printed out so far, and we'll give you. There's also a eval form. I think that's located all the way underneath all those handouts. So we'll give you that. Yeah, you can pass it out sometime if you get bored.
Oh. I'm not bored.
Okay. I like to give the opportunity. Okay, welcome back. So we're doing 3 preventative models and 3 proactive models. And I think this is really, really important. I can't stress it enough. My kids tell me I repeat myself all the time, and I say, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Right? But an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I say, I'm just following in my father's footsteps and my mother's footsteps, and you'll do the same. Okay, we all repeat ourselves. But, this is just so important. So let's frame some of the challenge of how difficult it can be sometimes to deal with ethical things that come up. And there, like we see, there are very touchy things that come up, and we really want to make sure that we are there for our clients. But sometimes things come up that are a little challenging, and I like this video I'm going to show you because it really frames it in very good terms. That it kind of turns it into the this versus that. So let's just go through this, and I'll get your thoughts when we're done.
Ethical decision making, choosing between the self and the other. When talking about ethical decision making, one has to be aware that there are 2 ways of approaching this process. The individualistic approach, or where a person is responsible for his or her own decision making, and consideration is given first to how it affects the self, rather than the other. There is also what might be called the communal approach, or where members of communities are partially responsible for the behavior of their members, and thus make decisions based on that view. Consider the debate about the legalization of drugs. Advocates argue that they have an individual right to do with their body as they please. A more communal approach would ask them to look beyond the individual and reflect on issues of public safety and the potential harm to others. In addition, when the interests of the larger community are included in any debate, solutions can be offered. What kind of drug policies will promote the good of both the individual and the community? It can only lead to a greater understanding of the issue for both sides. Should the self or other come first when making decisions? The conflict between individual and community is not easily reconciled. Anthropologist Colin Turnbull has written about the Mbuti pygmies of the Congo. The Mbuti have long employed nets of twined liana bark to catch their prey, sometimes stretching the nets for 300 feet. As Turnbull came to understand, Mbuti hunts were collective efforts in which each hunter's success belonged to everybody else. But one man, a rugged individualist named Sifu, had other ideas. When no one was looking, Sifu slipped away to set up his own net in front of the others. Word spread among camp members that Sifu had been trying to steal meat from the tribe, and a consensus quickly developed that he should answer for this crime.
And we call that capitalism, but in their culture...
Sifu defended himself with arguments for individual initiative and personal responsibility. He felt he deserved a better place in the line of nets. The tribe responded that if that were the case, Sifu should leave and never return. The Mbuti have no chiefs. They are a society of equals in which redistribution governs everyone's livelihood. Faced with banishment, a punishment nearly equivalent to a death sentence, Sifu relented. This ended the matter, and members of the group pulled chunks of meat from Sifu's basket. Among the Mbuti, as with most hunter-gatherer societies, equality is a system that enhances individual freedom. Following these ethical rules helps prevent any one individual from taking advantage of others, or even dominating the group as a whole because of unequal privileges. However, just as it is in our society, the negotiation between the individual and the group is always a work in progress. There are times when our willingness to consider both the good of the individual and the good of the community still leaves us in a dilemma, and we're forced to decide between competing ethical claims. Affirmative action programs, for example, bring concerns over individual justice into conflict with concerns over social justice. How does one decide? When facing such dilemmas, the weight we assign certain values will sometimes lead us to promote the common good. At other times, our values will lead us to decide on actions that will protect the interests and rights of the individual. But perhaps the greatest challenge in discussions of ethical decision-making is to find ways in which paradigms are designed to promote the interests of both.
Which is what we do. So, any thoughts, questions, comments? I mean, you can see how basically one of the big things about ethical dilemmas when two things contradict. You have confidentiality versus parental right. You have your expectation for society. For example, let's say a client discloses to you that every day he shoplifts. What do? I had a client in the methadone clinic. He told me that every single day he steals from Walmart. How do you do it? I said, there's door checkers. He says, Joe, you don't know anything. He says, you go there once, you have a receipt, and you just carry it out and you wave it and you tell them you're in a rush. So every week they don't recognize you. You have a receipt in your hand when you walk out and it has Walmart on the top. That's all. I said, oh, sorry. Pardon my ignorance. What do? Obviously, I'm not going to report him. I mean, obviously you hear the messages that he needs money, he needs help. Are you getting any government plans? Are you part of a organization, congregation, church, anything that can help you, right? But do you have to report this to the store? But what if he's stealing from a store down the block that your brother owns? Now what? All right, obviously you have confidentiality issues, and do you really believe him? Do you not? You're probably gonna be a little bit more biased though in how you respond. But what do you do when a client tells you that they're shoplifting or doing something illegal? Okay, these are ethical dilemmas. There's no real answer. You're not going to report them for certain things. They're not doing anything. It's not child abuse, child pornography, or anything illegal, or it's not duty to warn, duty to protect. So our job is done, so to speak. But it gets a little bit tricky as to what we're allowed to share and what we're not allowed to share, right? Or do you want to judge the client, right? What do?
Would it be an ethical violation for you to call your brother and just say, hey, you might want to check your security cameras?
I don't think so in that case, to tell someone, to strengthen something that's going on.
Right.
But what I do see happening a lot, for example, is that we work with a lot of the community schools, and the community schools trust us, and we find out things that are going on. And obviously, just like any teacher knows that you find out private things by, talking to the kids. I went to PTA recently, and my teacher said, I heard all these private things from your child. So, I said, all right, whatever. So she said, don't worry, I have a policy. You don't believe anything they say about us, and we don't believe anything they say about you. So, we hear plenty of things about the teacher too. All right. So, I hear every day what she had for lunch. Now she wore her hair. Girls notice these things. All right. So, it gets tricky when someone is trying to, if someone's relying on you and trusting your opinion, and someone that you're related to, might kind of say, well, how do you know that? Like I said, we're a community-based therapy, so we're dealing with people that live in this area, and inevitably we meet people that know each other sometimes. One example I always give is I had a couple I was working with couples counseling, and they kept telling me about their neighbor who, they had this perfect marriage, and why can't he act that way? And I knew they were on the brink of divorce, and that couple was seeing me also, and they were probably going to get divorced before this couple. I actually helped the couple I was working with, right, currently. But, so all I said to them was, we never know what's going on behind closed doors, and don't assume anything. And, she didn't want to accept that, and then they got divorced. She was shocked, and now she didn't believe in marriage. She didn't want to work in a marriage. Okay, that's a different, okay. But ethically, I can't say to them anything. I had a guy I was working with one time, a very fascinating case, in this specific type of thing, where he was counseling two people, and then he realized that they were both dating each other. Right? So whatever it is, he made a decision to discharge one of them, and then they both had complaints against him. Why didn't you disclose to me that you were seeing the other one? And they both had complaints against each other. Why didn't you disclose? But, and he was telling her to pursue him because it was good for her, and he was telling him to drop her because it didn't sound good. Now, why he was giving advice to either of them about what to do with their lives is a different story, but that I only came in the middle. Sometimes that's when you're consulted. There were a lot of preventative things that could have been done. And we'll talk about that in more specific detail later. But, yes, you could call your brother in general terms and tell him, I would heighten up security because it's always something that can be done, but you have to be very careful. How do I know that information? A relative of mine owns a very large company in town, and it's a company that employs a very interesting array. It has a very high-level management team and a very low menial team. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say it's a repair shop. So there's a management that's running this, Maryland state development, but there's also a menial labor one. So a lot of the people that work for them and do this menial labor are very hardworking and they're very well taken care of financially, but they have drug and alcohol issues. Well, this guy comes to my office and tells me that he works for my uncle. Okay? He didn't tell me, he didn't know it was my uncle, but he started telling me things about my uncle, which weren't true, in my opinion. But I have to believe him that his boss is a jerk. Okay? But, and anyone else that knows my uncle would not. This guy had a major alcohol problem. Okay? And so I disclosed to him that I've worked with that company before and I know some of the management team, and I want to disclose that to you so that you don't feel betrayed if something ever comes up that, oh, I've worked with them in the past, or I've consulted with them, or I know them. I want you to feel comfortable. And he said, no, I'm comfortable with you. I like you. Okay? So we worked together, and I helped him, take care of his alcohol problem. But, when things like that happen, sometimes we do need to disclose to clients that, there might be a conflict of interest that I don't think is, and I don't feel impaired, but I don't want it to come back and have you upset at me that I didn't tell you. So that, I would say, just use your judgment in this type of cases. But, if he were to tell me that, I'm stealing and I'm lying on overtime, he did tell me that. First of all, I can't tell my uncle that, but second of all, everyone knows that you need to have some system where you trust that, where he tells me that he takes home the truck even though he's not allowed to. That's not my problem. That's my uncle's problem to have tracking on his truck. That's not my problem. He ended up getting caught for it. I can't say I was happy or unhappy, right? So this happens sometimes, and we have to be very careful about what we say and what we do. Okay? Yes?
Question or comment, I guess. I've had some clinicians who have questions about wanting to report but not wanting to report because they feel like the system does not really support families.
Yeah,
so they would prefer to, let's beef up the services. They already get an OMAC. They get a family session, an individual session. Now let's give them PRP. Let's give them mentoring. Now let's do TBT, therapeutic behavioral. I forgot what it stands for, TBT, where they actually have 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, almost like an aide in the home to support the family. So they said, instead of reporting, let's put all of these services in place. Like, what do you do with that?
So we have a technical term that we call it. It's called unethical. They don't have a choice. They don't have a choice. There's Maryland state laws. Yes, I've reported many things. I've faxed to many things. Oh, we didn't get your fax. Could you resend it? What do you mean? I sent it 6 times. People on the phone that are callous and don't care or make stupid comments. I know, but I'm licensed. And so I've gotten my license and I've signed and I've taken the ethics course, and they always ask about reporting, and I'm a mandated reporter. That means that the state decides about what I have to report. And so I don't have a choice. I don't like it either. When I report, I'll say to them, and I think that I'm not, I have recommendations that I'm happy to talk to the social worker about. I'm happy to talk to CPS about what I would do to help. But I'm licensed and regulated. There's nothing I could do. You don't have a choice. So that's what I would say. You need to follow the codes. That comes to the banker. The banker had an ethical violation. If he doesn't like that policy, he doesn't have to work with them. That's what it comes down to. Things are a little bit more complicated when a clergy is involved and he or she has to decide whether to report because there is a lot more confidentiality there. Certainly a lawyer has their own, although if there's an active crime or kidnapping or other things, then even a lawyer does have certain duties, but those are much more complex. But we have a state obligation to protect people, and that's where it comes down to, this person's personal needs versus the state's regulations. And so that's why I say that very harshly. We don't have a choice. I don't like it either. There's a lot of ineptness, there's a lot of dysfunction, but that's the law, and ultimately you're the one that's going to lose your license for not doing it. So, it sucks. I agree. A lot of times it backfires. A lot of times I know when I report a client, I'll never see them ever again. I had a client that was being abused, and my hope was that I would help get him out of that house. But the marks that he came on with his face, the school and I both had to report that day. He went to school, and one of his family members brought him here, and we both reported. And I collaborated with the school as well because we had to release some information from the non-abusive parent who was divorced anyway. Once the kid called me up and said, "I really like you and I really trust you, but what you did to my father is not okay." I mean, he went to jail because he was abusing you. What I did to his father is not okay. And I said to him, "I know it must be really hard. I'm sorry you feel that. I'm sorry that it went out that way. But there's nothing I could do. It's my obligation." I think he'll get older and he'll recognize and understand. Although I don't know. It could be that I always hurt his father, and now I'll never have a relationship with him. It's horrible. It breaks my heart. But there's nothing you can do. That's the law. And this guy was convicted and did lose full any custody rights whatsoever.
Yeah, I've lost clients as well.
Sure.
Mom is driving drunk with the kid in the car, won't get help, yada, yada, yada. And
right.
It's like, can't keep that kid in the house.
Right, exactly. So that is a very big thing that we do lose clients that we're reporting sometimes, and there's nothing you can do. And some clients will just talk to you and they're just not ready for it. And then, even if you get away with not reporting, just the threat of, I might have to report could really scare them. So be careful. I always disclose that before they come in. Any client that comes in my office, the preventative model, we'll get to in a second, I always say to them, you're bound by confidentiality, but there are 3 exceptions to confidentiality. If there's ever any indication you're in danger for yourself or others, I'm required to report that. If there's ever any child abuse, physical, sexual, or severe emotional or elderly abuse disclosed, I'm required to report that. And if my notes get subpoenaed by a court of law, I'm required to comply with that. Okay? And then, that's it. That's the preventative model. They know and they've signed, and and they say to you, "Joe, I know." Yeah, it's funny they tell you it, but I had a woman came in my office one time, not here, downtown. She was Hispanic. She had just moved here about 3 months ago. She had a baby. Her husband moved back to Mexico to try to help with the job, etc. And she literally came in for her intake, and she had a 1-month-old baby. And she said, I asked her, "Are you suicidal?" "Yes." "Do you have a plan?" "Yes." "What is it?" "Tonight when we go to sleep, I'm going to kill myself and my 3 children. I'm going to turn the gas on, and I'm just going to leave it on all night until we all die." She was postpartum, maybe psychosis, certainly depression. That was, I had no choice. So I said to her, we could help you. So I don't want your help. I just want to die. He's not coming back. He's having an affair. I have no money, and I can't live this way anymore. I said, well, you came in here for help, right?
Did you EP her?
Well, I immediately called my supervisor in because that was the protocol of that clinic. And he sat down, and I said to her, can I drive you to the hospital? And she said, no, I will not go. So then we called 911. We got an ambulance there, and she would not leave. Why? Because she was worried about her car. She had a 1992 BMW, something like that. Okay? And she said, I'm going to go to the hospital, and it's going to get stolen. So the police officer said, ma'am, again, when people are trying to kill themselves, they're not...
You can't take the car with you when you're dead.
Right. It was definitely postpartum. Probably psychosis, certainly depression. He said, give me the keys, ma'am. I will drive by here every day, and I will turn your car on, and I will watch it for you. Okay, now, I'm not saying this was ethical or not. She said, fine, no problem. So they take her to the hospital, and she said, wait, who's going to pick up my kids from school? Don't worry. CPS.
The baby?
She left the baby in the front, because I asked the same question. And on the way out, the cop gave the keys to the front desk and said, here, if she comes back, you give it to her. Which I didn't think that was very nice either. She should have at least dropped it off at the hospital. She never came back. I mean, she did go, she was hospitalized, and she couldn't, how could she trust us after we betrayed her? But, you don't have a choice. She's one of many people. I've had a few active suicides. That was probably the most blunt, where it was like, you're doing your intake and getting the name, address, and then are you suicidal? Yes. Bam. Do I have the plan? Yes. Means yes. This is happening tonight. But that's what happens, and you got to be ready for it.
It's like, why are they even there?
Because she knew she didn't want to die. I believe. I call it the flirt of death. It's like when you flirt, then all of a sudden something happens. You're like, damn, can't believe we got that far, right? It's the same thing with suicide. People flirt with it, and then they end up accidentally dying, and they're kind of happy. I don't know if they are or they aren't. But that's what it is. She was flirting with death. She was flirting with death, and she needed the right medication to help her and the right support. Okay, preventative model number 1 is the VAs. I love this model. It's very simple. It's called Integrated Ethics. Okay, so it basically takes the acronym ISSUES, and you'll see they're all the same. So we're not going to spend too much time on it, but it's just identify the issue, right? So one issue we've had in this clinic is we've had loitering, where clients come here and we have coffee and we have all different things. And the secretaries will talk. They're nice to talk to. They're nice people, and they're kind of therapists. So many of my secretaries are in school for therapy because they want to do their internship here, or go into therapy because they're like, hey, this is fun. So it's fun. You have a guy who's in the office sitting here for 3 hours. Okay, that was a case we had 2 months ago. So identify what the issue is. Very clear. Study the issue. Well, what do I do? Can I tell him to leave? Can I tell him not to leave? I thought there was ethical violations of some confidentiality for him and the other clients. Okay, undertake select the strategy of how we're going to deal with it. Well, the preventative strategy should be to update our intake papers, which we do. But it says explicitly, please do not come more than 15 minutes early, and please do not stay more than 15 minutes late. I think that's pretty fair. It happens once in a while, but you're waiting. We already have a policy in there, not leaving your kids here, because those babysitting parents that I told you about, they used to drop their kids off, and 3 hours later they would come out. We're not a jungle gym. We have toys, but we have other clients to see. And I one time had to leave a kid in the room next door. Of course, I never did it again because the clinician had my head for it, because she painted the entire wall with finger paint and ate all the she had a jar. I didn't know. And then those beads, those OT beads. She popped every one of them on the floor. And she could have eaten one, but the parent wasn't there, and I had to move on to the next client. Okay, so undertake a plan, which is basically we're going to have this in the intake form, and then these are the type of things I don't like my secretaries to have to confront them because they have to see them every time. But I don't mind being the bully, so I call on the client and I just say to them, "How's the services? How are we doing? How's your therapist? I've noticed that you're spending a couple hours here a day. Is everything okay?" And everything's fine. Do you need something to do during the day? We have PRP services. Do you need a job? No, I don't need a job. I live in my mother's basement. I'm fine. Whatever the case is, right? So, or no, I don't need a job. I'm on disability. Okay. Well, are you aware of our policy is we really ask people not to stay more than 15 minutes? Okay, we have a conversation, and then we, make it happen. Evaluate and adjust. The client in this case was very receptive and very respectful, and cut down their visits by a half hour, of each time, I'm fine with that. And then sustain and spread. So that's the issues approach. I think it's great. I do this with anything that comes my way. Just basically identify, study, select the strategy. I love that one. Undertake the plan. Just do it. And then evaluate and adjust. Sometimes it doesn't work perfect. And then sustain and spread throughout the clinic. Make sure everybody's aware of it. That's the VA. Preventative. I love prevention. It gets rid of so many headaches. I'd rather do preventative things and not have to worry about things later. Okay? So usually I go through some examples of how we deal with it. But basically, one of the preventative measures is making sure you disclose fees. You need to have a fee in there. I had a client that came in there, and I did 3 hours of research with them, talking to other relatives of theirs and their psychiatrists and other stuff, and I sent them a bill for that, for my time. And they said, no, I'm not paying it. You didn't tell me ahead of time. And that happened 20 years ago, and it's never happened since, because the client was right, and I didn't disclose to them that whatever your rate is, I don't care if it's $50, I don't care if it's $150, you need to disclose to them what your fees are. So that goes in the paperwork, and before I make any phone calls for any client, note to self, because first time, shame on me, and the second time, it's not happening again. Then I disclose to the client. Just want to make sure that you're clear that this is my hourly rate charged by 15-minute increments for phone calls. Okay, now we're good. Again, there's all different examples. So that's the VA's issues. I like that one. I use that one a lot. The second model is basically supervision. We talked about being part of a supervision group. It's very, very helpful to have someone that you can talk to. Supervisors are not God, they're not perfect, but they have a lot more experience than we do, and they have things that they have resources that they use. For example, when people talk to me in the clinic, sometimes when there's an incident, whether it's security, mental health, or other problem, I had a one time Dr. Friedman, who was a co-supervisor, who has 36 years of experience. He calls me up after a session. I got him a new intake of a very, very severe case. 17-year-old boy who was having hallucinations. I didn't know what more than that, but I just knew he would do well with him. Calls me up. He says, I just spent 2 hours, He said, I need to talk to somebody sane. The guy was schizophrenic, and he was starting to have a major episode. I said to him, because we joke around, I said, well, why'd you call me? So he said, because my wife didn't answer the phone. Okay. So, we talked through some of the ethical things. He was 17, but he didn't want his father to be talked to, but this client was going to be in need of future hospitalizations. And so we were able to work out, what the ethical way to deal with it is. And he did decide that he thought that the client was in danger of hurting himself, and there was a duty to warn. There was some suicide ideation, and so the parents were contacted, and the client was hospitalized and stabilized. But these are just important things. We bounce off each other's. There are times that clients file complaints against us because we didn't help them. This happens with a lot of marriage and family cases where one person is disgruntled. One of them says, "Yeah, the clinician was great." The other one says, "He hated me" or "She hated me," and they were so biased or unethical. So we have to deal with that, and sometimes it's good to have a supervisor or a colleague who's a supervisor to talk to. Okay, so that's another model that I recommend being part of some type of supervision. Some of the benefits I see in supervision is that there's an outside unbiased opinion. They draw on their experience that they have. That might be a little bit more. It makes you articulate what's going on. Here, I think this code is being violated, or I think that code is being violated, and you have a place that you can turn to when questions come up. Some of the challenges are going to be their availability. Some of them charge. Some of their sometimes it's hard to get hold of them. Sometimes your personality doesn't really work so well. We've all had good supervisors, and we've all had lousy ones. Let's face that. And sometimes they have their own limitations, their own experiences or lack of experience. But again, I think a good supervisor is aware of their own lack of experience. For example, I had a case that came my way that was a very complex case, and I didn't feel competent in dealing with it, and I went out to get my own supervision and learned a tremendous amount. I read a couple of books on the topic, and I think I'm pretty good at it now. But whatever it is, there's things that we know a lot about, and there are things we don't know much about. So I like the supervision model. And finally, the legal model. If you're in private practice versus an agency, it's going to be a little different. Most agencies have legal counsel. Usually the people at the top are the ones that converse with them because they're being charged hourly. Although a lot of them are not. A lot of them are just a package and just don't bother us and don't have any problems. But it's very important to make sure there is some legal basis to what you're doing. What I would say is if you're in private practice, I would definitely think about joining some type of, I'm not going to give names because I always get in trouble because people have bad experiences with different ones. But there are a number of legal services, about 5 national brands, where you could buy into them, and you could buy it as a company for $89 a month around. It's an average about $90 a month, where you could have access to legal advice and legal things. It's very powerful sometimes to have a lawyer on staff, and I'll give you a few examples as to why. Or there are ones where you get an individual plan for $25 a month, which might be well worth it. Just read carefully what you're getting, because you're not going to get too much more than that, but some of it is worthwhile. So, for example, intake paperwork. You could buy something, you could get something for free, but then you might want to have a lawyer look it over and just make sure it's binding. Contracts. I find this very helpful. For example, it's very important to have an arbitration clause in any of your contracts if you hire someone else to work for you. The reason is because technically, if someone takes your service, they could sue you and bring you to court. You might win. You probably will, because you're going to have a contract on them, and etc. But it's much easier to just define that you need an arbitrator, and it has to be in the state of Maryland. Because otherwise, let's say you do online services, right, and someone sues you in Virginia, or someone sues you in Tennessee that you didn't provide what you wanted, they could sue you in Tennessee, and you have to go there. So you always want to have an arbitration clause. There's a lot of privacy clauses. A lot of us have websites. Just make sure you're up to date with what is required. And having a lawyer look over things can be very helpful. I think it's worth $25 a month or $90 a month to think about that, especially if you're growing as a private practice, especially if you're hiring someone else who you have no control over. Yes?
So I know that, my malpractice insurance has legal counsel.
Do you interact with them? Do you interact with them?
Well, I mean, I could. That's part of.
Okay, fine.
So, do you think there's benefit to doing something separate?
This is what I would say. If you interact with them and you've gotten the uses that you've needed out of them, then you're fine.
Well, I haven't had to use them, but at one point I had a question for them,
and they were
very responsive,
fine.
and
then
I felt comfortable.
Then I have no
okay.
opinion. Okay. But I mean, we have 10 clinicians here. We do a tremendous amount of work. Things get subpoenaed all the time. Disability, other cases. I've had to do a few depositions for clients, but all of them where the client wanted me to do a deposition, and I charge an hourly fee for it, and whatever it is. If it comes up, give me a call and I'll help you through it. From the mental health / business perspective, not from a legal perspective. I can't help you with that. But what I have found very helpful is times that we have been subpoenaed. I had a few of my clinicians have gotten subpoenaed for custody evaluations or other things, and I have my lawyer call and say, why does my clinician have to take off? Why can't you just write a statement for 10 minutes and just send it to you? Okay, we'll accept that. It's very powerful to have that happen. I've had cases where we ordered things and supplies for different things, and there was a problem, financial problem or a delivery problem, and my lawyer will call and say, what's going on? We're calling from this and this law office. And it's not intimidation. It's just simply, I would like to know what's going on. And all of a sudden, miraculously, we get refunded our $500 that were misappropriated. So I think it's helpful. Certainly, if you're a sole practitioner or you're working for an agency and you have a private practice on the side, okay, it's not the most important. If you have legal coverage and you use it, that's great. But, we do a lot of contracts. We do a lot of innovative things. I have supervision liability insurance. If you do supervision, you want to have that. I have training liability insurance. I don't anticipate anybody suing me or telling me that I did a bad job training, but you need to protect yourself, okay? So it could be helpful for intake paperwork, client handbooks, employee handbooks. As you grow especially, it's really important. The agencies usually have their own bureaucratic thing. Is that too hot, by the way? You can lower it.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Okay, so there's a minus button.
Mm-hmm.
Just click that a couple times. So maybe put it like 72 or...
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, if we're burning you too much, you can even move it out this way.
Oh, it's fine. I don't want to get them hot.
Okay. So for policies and procedures, that could be very helpful. To be honest with you, most people, kind of in private practice, don't buy it until they need it, and that's fine too. And if you have supplemental insurance that helps, then that's cool. Okay, so those are the 3 preventative models. I like the VA's model. It's very simple. I like having supervision, and I like having legal if you need it. Certainly, as you grow, I think it's something worth thinking about. Let's get to the ACA model, the proactive. So you have an ethical violation at hand or an ethical problem at hand. What do you do? Okay, so the ACA has a very simple 7-step model. Don't waste your time writing it down unless you're helping yourself remember it, because there's a great handout that they give, and I do this with all my supervisees. And anytime I interview anybody, anytime I supervise them, I always give them this handout, and I say, this is what we do, and it's from the ACA. I believe it's in that packet. If not, it's on the ACA website, and it's definitely on the big one that I published. Okay, so it's basically identify what the problem is. It's very similar, but remember, we're dealing with a proactive problem. Apply the ACA Code of Ethics, and you can just fill in that blank. It'll be the ACA, the NASW. Apply it. Determine the nature and dimensions of the dilemma. Sometimes there's different details that are going on. Generate potential course of action. I have a couple of choices. They like that choice. Some of them don't focus on choices of options. Some of them just kind of dive right into the solution. Consider the potential consequences. That's the main thing they're going for. What are the consequences if I let this guy get away with it? What are the consequences if I don't report this? If I do report that? If I do make that move? And then evaluate a selective course of action, implement the course of action, and that's where it ends. It doesn't have a follow-up. Again, some of them have follow-ups where to see if it worked. Like the VA wants you to follow up. The ACA is not against you following up either, but if you survive those 7, you're good. Okay, so I use that flow chart with them. It's very important. The most important thing, and this you should write down, is document, document, document. It's like location, location, location. If you didn't write it, it didn't happen. The amount of lawsuits that I read about where the doctor, especially malpractice suits, where the doctor has all these explanations, and I believe him. It doesn't say it in your notes. It didn't happen. Okay? And I can't stress this one enough. When you get audited, they want to know what your notes say. One of my favorite audits that I like to give examples when I do supervision is one of my clinicians. This guy never gets a thing audited from him, ever. The one thing he ever lost was he did an emergency session, which for Medicaid, they do pay more for emergency sessions. It was a 1-hour emergency session, and they should pay you about double or triple the normal amount. And the billing department didn't recognize the code that was put in, and so the note was written and documented. It was a client was in crisis. Clinician spent 2 hours, billed a 1-hour session, and it was accidentally billed as a 45-minute regular 90834. Thank you. And they said, we want our money back because that session never happened. And I said, you're right. My clinician spent 2 hours in an emergency session. Too bad. So they took their money back. So that's just petty. Okay, but they can't have any complaints that we were not in compliance. That was just a technical thing. So I said it's good. I wish everyone's stuff were just retracted for that. But the truth is that most of the retractions do take place because of that. Or some type of stupid error that they say is technical. Or we accidentally billed an hour session and it was too late to rebuild. Things like that. Okay, so write down the date and time, what happened. I had a supervisor that this story happened to, and I'll tell you a very simple way to prevent this. But basically, he had a woman he was working with who had some severe issues, and she called him up and said, "I need an emergency session." It was very late, and he said, "All right, just come in. I'll do one session for you." And it was 8 o'clock at night, and basically she came in and stripped naked in his office. Okay, so he was a supervisor, and but he also understood that like this could end very poorly because whatever she says, it's he said, she said. So he said to her, "That's not appropriate, and I'm going to step out of the room for 1 minute while you clothe yourself, and I want you to leave my office immediately." And she got freaked out and said, "Well, why did you make me take off my clothes?" And he said, "Just leave." And that's exactly what she did. She followed, and she left, and he immediately called his supervisor and just said, "I'm writing and I'm talking at the same time. This is exactly what happened." And nothing ever came of it. He wasn't ever sued or anything. But that's just an example. Is how we started off his class I was taking on sexual conduct. It's very important to make sure. Now, in this clinic, we're open from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. You're not allowed to see anybody that's not on your schedule. You're not allowed to have any last-minute things. There's always someone here. A few weeks ago, I was here, maybe doing a 6 o'clock session, and about 5 weeks ago or so, and I heard a loud crash. And our policy is that even if the door says, do not disturb, if you hear something in a room, you run in. And I ran in, and the bookshelf had fallen. The client was like very animated and knocked the bookshelf. Nobody got hurt, but they were very happy that someone else came in there. I had about 2 years ago, I had a client in this office. She caught her husband cheating, and she had documentation of it, and she put it in his face very forcefully and very loudly. And I'm not judging whether he deserved it or he didn't, but it was to the point that a number of my clinicians who are trained, when you hear screaming that's going on that loud, you come in and you say, "Is everything okay?" Everything was fine. Okay, but you always want to have a backup system where people have you. So document the date and time, write down what happened exactly, which is what the supervisor did. Who was present? Was there anyone else there that could testify for or against you? What did you do? What was your ethical response? What's your justification for that ethical response? I think his was very good. He stepped out of the room to give her privacy and told her to please leave the premises within 1 minute. And then a follow-up if there was any action that took place. So I can't stress that one enough. So that's the ACA model. You have that printed there. I love this one. It's a great graphic. I mean, it's not like the best, but it works, and I do it with all my supervisees when something comes up. And again, you get very good at it. It's just like, okay, I understand. Here's the problem. Let's deal with it. Okay? But document everything. Model number 2 is Reamer. If you know anything about Reamer, he's the NASW poster boy. He's written all these books on all the different social work stuff. Dr. Reamer. He's a good guy. And I've used a couple of his books, actually, in preparing this presentation. If you want his ethical case book is very good. So sometimes when we have meetings, I'll read off the case and I'll challenge my, people that work here with that. So Reamer basically has a 6-step process. So he says, and it's written by a man and a woman. I like it. It has like some intuitive stuff that both of them brought to the table. So determine, is this even an ethical dilemma? A lot of questions are not ethical dilemmas. They're very simple. Yes, you need to report that. Yes, that's a dual relationship. No, you can't do that. All right. So determine whether it is an ethical dilemma, and that's usually when two things contradict one another. Okay, then identify the key values. Because remember, the decisions that we make, like in that tribe story, it's the individual versus the group. Well, in social work, there's a responsibility towards both. So identify the core values and principles that are involved, and then rank the core values if you can about what's most important. That's a little twist, but rank what's most important, because you might have something that you think is important, but the social work code of ethics might have a different opinion on that. And then develop an action plan about how you're going to deal with that. Implement your plan about what you're going to do, and then reflect, which I agree with. I think there needs to be a reflection. I always sit down. The most important question is not how you dealt with it. It's, okay, now what? Okay, we dealt with that ethical issue. Now what? What did you learn? That's how we become good. What did you learn? Well, I learned that I shouldn't experiment with those things. I learned that when a client says this, I need to ask them a few more questions to get that clear. Okay? Any questions or comments? Any questions on comments online? Just haven't looked there in a little bit. Okay. And the last model is called the Ethics Rules Screen Model. And it's a 2-step process, which is basically examine the code of ethics to determine if the code already gives a rule and tells you what to do. Okay? So, again, it's kind of, sometimes there is a rule that's stated, and sometimes there is not. If there's no ethical rule given, then look at the following 7 criteria, and I like the the importance here. How do you protect life? That's very important. No one should die based on what you do. Equality and inequality is a big factor in decision making. autonomy versus freedom, which we'll talk a little bit more in some of the examples. Least harm practices is very important. Quality of life is very important. Privacy and confidentiality, which is our obligation, and then truthfulness and full disclosure. Okay? In the last part of this segment, I want to practice with you guys, so we'll do a couple of samples together. I want to just give an opportunity if anyone has any general questions or comments, and we're going to have one more opportunity for that. And we have about a half hour left, so we'll probably just go through till the end of the 3-hour training. I just want to look if anyone has any questions online here so that we could deal with that as well. And then I'll give one more opportunity for anybody. And just a quick thing, if you could hand out the evaluation forms now so everybody could...
We did.
Oh, okay, perfect. So everybody has one of those. So, and if anybody online, you just click on that link at the top. It's sticky at the top. There's a quick evaluation form. You could start filling it out now if you plan to be here till the end of the training. And we will get you your, it's usually emailed probably before the end of today. And do me a favor, if you're getting it emailed to you, just shoot us a quick email back. Let us know that you got it, because then we take you off the list and we know that you got it. And we didn't end up in your spam box. And if you're here, we'll give it to you at the end of the course as well. So any questions or comments for you guys? Okay, and any questions online? All right, back to the regularly scheduled program. So let's do a little bit of practice. Current slide. All right, here we go. Okay, so I just like that icon. It's kind of cute, even though it's missing an apostrophe, so it does drive me nuts. Okay, okay. So remember, we're always looking to document. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but we really want to document, the exact situation at hand so that nobody can come back and say that we messed up or didn't do the right thing. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you're answering. Let's look at a couple. Okay, so you're a staff therapist at a hospital. Sally's 86 years old. She's very ill. She's been in the hospital for 6 months, and her health is obviously declining. She signed a consent form to allow you to converse with her son, Tom, who's making all of her medical decisions. And that is significant to keep in mind. And Tom tells you that, look, her doctor just informed Tom that the test results confirm Mom is basically dying from her uterine cancer. Okay? So, but Tom says, I'm begging you, Mom's depression and anxiety are out of control, and this news is going to devastate her and kill her, literally. I'm afraid she's going to die if you tell her. So, but Sally's saying to you, well, look, I'm 86 years old. I want to know what's going on. Like, my body feels horrible. When am I going to get some answers? What do you do? It's not a trick question. It's just, it's hard. So anybody online wants to start typing some ideas, and anybody in here that wants to go first, go ahead.
You absolutely tell the patient, because she's competent. There's no certs in her chart saying that she's incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
And the son is not the guardian. He may be the POA, but that's not a guardian.
Yeah.
So you tell the patient.
Okay. Is anybody? Yeah.
I was going to say, and also like the golden rule. Like, I think if I would want to know, like, I deserve to know. But I would tell Tom first that I was telling his mom.
Okay, just to kind of keep the peace.
Yeah, or I wouldn't lie and say, okay, I'm not telling. You know what I mean? I think we should all.
Just to keep the secret.
Or if you'd like to be in the room when I tell her.
Right. So let's go through some of the things here, because we're supposed to look at the ethical things. I think it's important. So the first one is confidentiality. So obviously we have a right to talk to Tom. So we already took care of that. The next one is a very important term, especially in care. It's called paternalism. Now, paternalism is when you basically are in a place of authority, and then you basically decide that, well, as your parent, I'm justified to support your best interest of the subordinate. There is a place for it. There are people in the nursing home, for example, that I've worked with across the street or other places that I've consulted with, where you have someone in the nursing home and her sister died. And they're afraid, the family's afraid that if you tell her that she's going to give up hope on living. And I had a case like this 3 years ago where someone's brother died, and he found out, and he wasn't even sick. He literally died within 3 days because it was his last remaining one in the family, and he just, I guess, it was a psychological thing. So there is certainly such a thing. It became very popular in the 60s when doctors were basically exerting it, and there is a concept of paternalism in the hospital where sometimes you need to take that role. But there's pseudo-paternalism, and this is what Reamer is very concerned about. It's withholding information claiming to be the best interest, but really due to your own either discomfort or your own dysfunction, quite frankly. And I think in this case, I do agree with you that I do think she has a right to know that, unfortunately, I would give it a lot of hope in the sense that I would say to her, the doctors are aware of your pain and they're doing everything they can to alleviate it, and we're working right now to see if there's any last-minute treatments that we could try to apply to you. However, unfortunately, what you're suffering from right now is stage 4, uterine cancer, and the doctor is not sure if you're going to be able to pull out. And I think that is a very important thing to let her know. And then, of course, some other factors here, which are not said in the case, but consultation would be speaking to people with more experience and knowledge. If you just started in the hospital, then you need to talk to other people. And then mental competence of the client, which is what you were mentioning. She's lucid in this example, and she's competent, so there's no reason. We're not talking about, where she has dementia and is totally not functioning, and the son's making all medical decisions as a guardian, as a legal, power of attorney. And then self-harm and suicidal fears, which were not present in this case, but if it would be present, then there will be something. If I ever find out that I'm dying of cancer, just kill me now, and the client meant it, then you would have a whole different case. Interesting, sad, but this is the reality of what we do. We face. Allison says, I agree with whoever answered the first one. Thank you. And then Susan wrote, I would try to educate Tom about why I think it's important to tell mom to start. You're right, except Tom probably won't agree with you and probably won't be able to hear it because he's in his own pain and mourning. And sometimes we have to be aware. But I think we all agree that I would tell Tom, thank you for your consideration, but the policy here is that we need to share it. Well, that policy is crazy. Let me talk to your supervisor. I am the supervisor. That's what I just say. Which is annoying. It's the truth. Okay, so you work in a large behavioral health agency. Your daily job is to see children and parents and help them with their ADHD, anger, anxiety, classroom, academic issues. The agency is short-staffed, and your supervisor calls you and to tell you that you've just been promoted to supervisor for the clinic's adoption program. Congratulations. Don't worry, he says. You're a quick learner. You question whether you are sufficiently knowledgeable about the unique and complicated clinical and legal issues related to adoption and parent interview, screening, termination of parental rights, open adoptions, family management, and post-adoption crisis and challenges. What do you do?
You decline.
Is that it? But come on, practically speaking, you're declining this. It's a $20,000 bump.
I would try to be honest with that supervisor because if I wasn't, I know it would crash and burn anyway.
Right.
And that's worse. So, I mean, not that it would be an easy decision, but yeah. That's what I would do.
So this is where it gets a little tricky. Obviously, you need to represent yourself as competent only in the boundaries of your education and training. Mm-hmm. So I would ask for a training program. Okay? Mm-hmm. You're right. I would decline and say, I really appreciate this job, but I need to learn. If you were to start giving me excuses, well, you've been exposed, I need something. Mm-hmm. Give me something that I could feel more confident. Maybe it's a 10-hour training course. Maybe it's CEU for 6 hours about adoption.
Not a book.
Not a book, right. I need to learn from a human being. I agree with that. Although there are people that are, visual learners and a book could be helpful as a secondary, but I think you need human interaction. Okay? And then, if you were to say to you, well, there's no standard, it's just, we just do it. He might be right. Okay? So then you would have to exercise proper judgment here to ensure that you are working in a competent setting. So maybe you would say, look, I'll take the job, but let's first define my rules. Give me the rules, and I'll tell you what I'm competent doing, what I'm not. If I'm just screening for their mental health issues, that's fine. But if I'm running the adoption program, that's scary. Okay? Yeah. Next, Tom comes to see you due to anxiety brought on by his financial stress. He was divorced and had shared custody of his 9-year-old daughter. He agrees to pay you $75 per session, according to your sliding scale fee. After 1 month, which is 4 sessions, Tom says that he just lost his job, and although he desperately needs the services, he has not a penny to his name in order to pay you. What do? You
have to give him other options and refer him out because once they hit $500, then the session. That's what you said earlier. It becomes questionable. So yeah.
Okay. Any other opinions?
I've had not such an extreme situation, but something where they lost their job, they got divorced, their income goes way down.
Yeah.
And I kind of have to have a conversation with them, saying, okay, here's what I'm okay with doing temporarily.
Right.
I'm okay with doing this for 2 months. Let's come up with a reasonable fee. I've never done it for free.
Right.
I will say that.
I agree with you. It's
totally pro bono. Unless up front I decided to do it pro bono. And I do have one pro bono.
Right. And
that's, I don't know.
Thank you for
it's code of ethics or not.
No. Thank you for sharing that, actually. I do want to say that I also have one pro bono, and I encourage all my clinicians to have one. Mm-hmm. I think we learn a lot from those type of clients, and I think that is a service. Yeah. Okay. I do have one pro bono. Yeah. Slot that I give out.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, and I think it's very nice. And to be honest, even though some of them are very frustrating and I have a waiting list for it, I actually appreciate working with these clients, and I find them a lot more entertaining. Yeah. But they're not my experimental clients because we don't have the right to do that. But after that, everyone else has to pay for it. I do agree that free therapy generally does not work. people invest, and the most successful clients are the ones that pay the most. Period. Because they're invested and they're putting in energy and they're going to listen to everything I say. If every minute in there is costing them $2, okay, or more, right? In this case, I certainly would refer him out though, because it's going to have, there's going to be a financial situation where I would say to him, look, there's governmental things I could help you sign up. I could tell you where to go. If he's competent, I'm not going to necessarily just sign him up for it. But I would say there are governmental plans, and here's a list of 3 clinics that I know of in this area that you can go to, or go to Psychology Today, or look on if he has Medicaid at that point already, then but he just doesn't like the therapists that are available. I would say to him, I would call the insurance company and let them help you find someone. And I would do maybe I would say to him, I'll do one more session over this next week, and then but document that we spoke to the client about moving on, and the client understands that's a responsibility. Basically concurrence with that. But these things happen all the time.
And it's so hard, because if you've been working with this person for a long time, you've been rapport,
yes.
It's so hard for them to start over with somebody new.
Agreed. But, I also frame that in a positive way, even though they don't want to hear it. But I say, you know what? Sometimes it's healthy to start on with someone new, because it helps you realize how much accomplished and changed. And then you can come in there and meet someone new and talk about all the new things you want to work on, and we get stuck with each other sometimes. So it's not crazy. Okay, next case. Jen comes to see you for marital issues. She has major complaints regarding her husband, Chuck. You take her on to work with her and begin to help her sort through her emotions. After 3 sessions, you suddenly realize you're already working with Charles, Jen's husband, for the past 3 months. He came to you for support during his affair and for help to determine whether or not he was interested in saving his marriage. True story.
So
one of my supervisees. What do you do?
One of them has to be.
One of them has to go?
Yeah.
I think so too. I think it's going to be very hard to help both of them unbiasedly.
Or could you refer both of them to a family therapist?
I don't. He doesn't want a family therapist. He's not sure if he wants to stay or not.
How long were you working with her till? Because I was going to say if there were someone else in the, especially if you're in an agency, that you could be like, oh, I'm full, or oh, this, like, can you see this?
You could be anything. I mean, if you ever need to get rid of a client, by the way, you never tell them you're a bad person, I can't work with you. You always tell them something along the lines of, I really enjoy working with you. At this point, I thought I was going to be able to see you once a week, which is what you need, in my opinion, but unfortunately I'm not able to do that. Or in my professional opinion, I think that you need to be seen twice a week in order for me to be able to help you, and I can't provide that right now. You never tell them you're a horrible person, I don't want to work with you anymore.
But would you tell in this case? Would you say to either one?
No, you can't.
Right. So that's confidentiality.
You can't tell them.
You would refer them both out to somebody else. Because you can't be unbiased.
Again, what you could say, the issue here with Jen is that you only saw her 3 times. So you could easily say to her, even though this might feed into her own negative self-image, that she's beyond help if that's her self-image issue. You could just say to her, I thought when I took you on that I'd be able to help you with this, but I don't have so much experience in what you're describing to me. I'm sorry.
Because it would be easier to move Jen.
Right, because she came second also.
Right, like Charles was there first, so.
Right. Now, the question you have to think about is, if he knows that you worked with her, would that be a problem? But that's not your problem because you can't disclose either of them.
But if he says to you, oh my gosh, I just figured out that you saw my wife, I have some feelings about this.
Yeah.
Then
so
you have to process that with him. Right?
That's a very important thing. So you would say to him that as a policy, I would never work with a husband and wife knowingly, and if it did come up, then whoever came first, I would discharge the second one and just explain to them that I couldn't work with them anymore. So if that's the case, I could talk to you, but I can't confirm or deny whether I worked with your wife or not. And he might say, "Oh, you're just lying to me." That's fine, and you might lose him over it too, which could happen easily. But chances are, from the profile that I described about him, he probably won't be sticking around too long anyway. Because after all, he doesn't need help from what he's describing. Right? It's all her. So you're probably not going to be dealing with it for too long. Samantha has been seeing you for a year now. While recapping the progress of who you made, she breaks down crying. When I first came in, I was a victim stuck in depression and anxiety over my sexual trauma, but you have supported me and really helped get my life together. She reaches out and asks for a hug. So that's one ethical question, which we'll talk about in a second. At the end of the session, she presents you with a $100 gift certificate to a local jewelry store and a beautiful card expressing her appreciation. What do you do? Okay, we do not accept gifts from clients.
The card.
The card. No.
The card?
No.
Well, this is a debate. This is a debate. Okay. I'm comfortable accepting a card, although I respect people that don't, because I think a card is just a simple, nominal expression. But there are some agencies that do.
No, I thought you meant the gift card.
Oh,
no.
the
Oh,
card.
no, no,
Right.
no. Yeah.
That was.
I had a client who, before the Jewish New Year, she came in. She was very happy it was New Year, and she gave me like this whole fruit basket and candy basket. And I said to her, I really appreciate it. It's very beautiful and it's very meaningful. But I am, unfortunately, I'm not. Our policy here is that we don't accept any gifts. She said, "Oh, you don't like me? I always knew you didn't like me." She had a whole tantrum. She says, "You know what, Joe? I'm going to leave it by the garbage on the outside. Do whatever you want with it."
It's like the worst possible.
And my kids came. I took my kids at the end of the day. They came here that day, like, "Daddy, look at that candy." She left it at the garbage. Okay, I didn't lose her over that. That was when I took Medicaid, but she did go to another therapist at the same time. She was actually seeing 4 therapists at the same time.
She has a personality disorder?
Yes, correct.
So this is
I had to figure it out.
You were in a group with other clinicians?
No, she was seeing 4 clinicians, so none of us got paid.
No, I just meant originally when she was seeing you.
When I was there,
agency with
I was in an agency.
Because, like, would it have been unethical for you to say, I can't accept this personally, but I'm going to leave it in, thank you, and
I wouldn't do that
for everybody?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
But you have to be very careful. When a client gives you something, you need to acknowledge it. There was a client that I used to see once a month, and she sent me a Christmas card. And I think she crossed out and wrote Happy Hanukkah, like, respectfully, which was very nice. And she wrote a beautiful, she was a, older woman, and she was very, like, respectful. And I literally, like, I keep a list of stuff on my desk, different stuff that clients give me. And to make sure I say thank you after they, and it was a holiday season, so by the time I saw her, it was like February for that year, and she, at the end of the session, she says, "You didn't get my card, did you?" And I said, "No, I did. I'm so sorry. Like, thank you." It was very important to her to hear that. I had another client who was diagnosed with very severe cancer, and they thought he was going to die, and he was very hopeful, and he was very appreciative of the support I was giving him, and he brought me a bottle of champagne. And I didn't want to, like, throw back in his face. This guy could be dead, like he was going in for a procedure. And so I made an ethical decision, and I documented it in my notes. I said to him, "You know what? I'm not allowed to accept gifts, but, like, this is so meaningful to me." And this guy was very spiritual, and he wanted me to pray for him. So I said, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold it on my desk. No one's going to know. I have a bottle of champagne. They'll come in the therapist's office. They'll think I have a drinking problem. It's fine. They'll relate to me more." No kidding. They understand it, but it wasn't kosher. I wasn't allowed to drink it anyway. Okay? So I said, "I'm going to put it here, and I'll pray for your well-being." He liked that. And when you come back after the procedure, then I'll send it home, and you and your wife will go, enjoy it. And that's what we did. So I found an ethical way. I didn't want to tell him, "No, go get your procedure. You're going to be in the hospital for the next 6 months. And you're going to be bald, and you're not going to have any friends, and you're going to die." So I made an ethical choice at that moment that I'm not throwing his champagne back in his face.
So then you found a way to use it.
Right.
Yeah,
so I left it on my desk, and he came back 9 months later, and he picked up his champagne, and I continued working with him for a while. Yeah. So just find something meaningful. It doesn't have to be, flowery, but, like, that was meaningful to him and me. I don't think that my prayers saved him, but I think him knowing that someone cares about him, worked, and he was a fighter. He was a real fighter. So, we have to be very careful. Clients forget things in your office all the time. That chair that you're sitting on, for example, my clients love that chair. If you go fishing in there, I had a guy that pulled out. He came back. No, that one. I had a guy that came back 6 months after not seeing me and says, "Oh, here are my sunglasses." And my cleaning crew is supposed to vacuum too, but we've probably found, like, I don't know, $100 in that couch over the years. It's a cash couch. So we have to be careful. We have a lost and found box, and that's another thing we disclose to clients. So the hug thing, if touch is used in therapy, it needs to be defined. If a client wants to hug you, it's fine. Okay, as long as they're initiating it. Okay, if they're initiating it, it's fine.
What if you're creeped out by them? I've had male clients that I do not want to.
So if it's a gender issue or a sexual issue, but you think there might be something
that's
more
just creepy.
That's fine.
You know what I mean?
Then I just say to the client, I would love to hug you. In my office, I only do high fives. If you're okay with that. If you don't want to do the high five, it's fine too. You could just say, we're a hands-off office, policy-wise, Okay. Irv Yalom, who I was going to mention before, I was going to mention him, and I love him. He's a great guy. If you read his books, so he has a client that was bald, and the client was very self-conscious about her head and how bald it was, and he likes to make connections with clients, and she asked him, one time, like, are you turned off by my bald head? And he said, "No, I think it's very beautiful." And she said, "Well, could you give it a kiss?" And he did. And and I would not recommend that because I don't think that's appropriate, but if you have an 87-year-old man who's a psychiatrist at Stanford University who's written his whole life, I wasn't worried about his behaviors, but that's not generally appropriate. But there was another client that was eating an orange and said, "Hey, you want a piece?" And he said, "Yeah," and he took a piece. You can connect with the client by eating with them, but most of our clients, we don't necessarily want to touch them, right? Because we look at them. But think about how they feel. I shake my hands with clients when they leave, and I have a Purell. I have it all over the office. I always do that. One time, my client shook my hand, and the second they leave, I squirt my hands and rub. And he comes back in the room, and he says, "Hey, what's that, Joe?" I said, "Oh, I'm just cleaning my hands." He caught me. And he was like, "Oh, are you sick?" I said, "No. I just Purell my hands in between every session." He's like, "Oh, cool. Should I do it also?" I said, "Yeah, there's one for you on the outside."
A lot of people come in and out. Like,
it is what it is.
People do it.
It is what it is. But he caught me. It happens. So now I close the door now, and then I squirt. Just be careful. The hugs, I'm not worried about. If you use it in therapeutic, for example, if you do EMDR and you tap the clients, which I don't, they tap themselves or they hold their buzzers or they use a light beam. But if you do, for some reason, there is therapeutic value, just document it, talk it over with the supervisor. The gifts, that's a big no-no. So just say to the client, "I really appreciate it. It's very thoughtful, but our policy is that we don't accept any gifts."
What if it was just something, like a kid making you a macaroni necklace?
If it's not, but here's the thing.
$1 value.
If it's less than $25, a lot of the ethical books say that it's not a big deal.
I think for social work they say 5.
Right.
I think.
So I was about to say, there are people that say 5 to 10.
Okay.
If someone writes us a Christmas card, as long as they don't write their name on it, I think we have a few still up. It's fine. If a client wants to put up a picture and they want to see their name and they have a client coloring picture, it's fine. It's all good. As long as their name isn't on there. Okay? If it says Samantha, it's fine. But if it says Samantha Johnson, then it's not fine. Things like that. So, just be reasonable. Clients like to think that you're thinking about them all day long. You know what? Sometimes we are, but generally we're not. Because we should, if we're healthy people, we have lives outside. Okay, this is my case that happened. A very different case, but similar translation. George is a lively 28-year-old client. Been supporting in his quest to break free of alcohol addiction. After 12 months of hard work, he's clean, turned around his life. Great. Your practice is thriving, and you're now ready to buy your dream car. You show up one Sunday at a dealership and have a good idea what you want. When your name is called, you look up, and your salesman is not even George, your client. Hey, George.
Current client or
your
past?
Current client.
Current client. Okay.
What do you do?
It's so hard because you can't break his confidentiality in front of anybody. You can't be like, "Oh, hey, how are you?"
It's a conflict of interest. You can't work with him.
Yeah.
I would not work with him.
Yeah.
Because I think that, first of all, you have a 4 to 7 year range, even if he wasn't a current client, that you need to hold his records. And, I had a client, I discharged him, and we worked very well. And he's like, "Joe, you're the type of guy I would be friends with. Could we be friends now that you discharged me?" And I said, "Not for 7 years, bud." And he emailed me 7 years later. He thought I was serious.
Oh.
Yeah, and I wrote back, I apologize for the misunderstanding. We're not allowed to work together, as friends, even though you are the type of guy that I would be friends with. Yes, even though he wasn't. Right? But, but ethically, we would not be allowed. Well, he's like, "Okay, but can I at least tell you what's going on in my life?" "Sure, no problem. Fine. Call me." Of course, he doesn't listen and he emails me, but that's fine. That's his breach of confidentiality because we'll talk about technology at the end. I want to save a few minutes on that. So what do you do? I would not work with him. I would just say, I wouldn't embarrass him. I would just say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying a new car. Could we just sit down for 5 minutes and show me what you have online? Thanks. It's really cool." I had a client that worked somewhere locally in a store, and he dropped out of therapy for a while. And I didn't do this on purpose, but I walked into his store literally just thinking I was going to pick up something for the house. And he's like, "Oh, hey, Joe, you came to check on me?" In front of his boss and everyone. "Who's that?" "Oh, that's my therapist." So I just said, "I deny all allegations," and I was like, "I'm just here to buy an end table." They're like, "All right, well, he'll take care of you." And he ended up coming back to therapy because of that. I think he thought I was trying to check up on him. I knew he worked in a whatever furniture store or department store. I had no idea. So you have to be careful. But I tell my clients straight out, I follow your lead. So if I see you in public and you ignore me, that's fine. If you say hello to me, I'll talk to you, but I'll never talk anything clinical. I think it's really important, especially in my community that I come from. People think, "Oh yeah, we're both Jewish, so we'll see each other at a wedding or something." That's cool, but we're not talking about anything clinical outside the office. And I think if you show them that you're serious, then they'll respect that. So that's what I would say. You don't want to lose a client, I had one client that I told him this on the intake, and a few weeks later he saw me, and he was very upset at me. Why did you ignore me? And I said, I'm really sorry. I literally don't remember seeing you, but you should just know that my policy is that I don't talk to you unless you talk to me. And he's like, okay. So the next time he saw me, he like stopped me and said, hey, Joe, how are you? He was a caterer, and I was at an event that he was waitering for. So I'll tell you the last story I had, which is interesting. I had a client that I worked with on some severe sexual issues, and I put my car in the shop to get the oil changed. And what I do whenever I have a car problem is I drop it off at 9 o'clock, and then I pick it up at 5. So I call an Uber to go pick it up at the end of my day, and it comes outside, and I look up, and it's my client. He's driving for Uber. So I look at him, and I say, I said, do you know who I am? He said, yeah, I know who you are. I said, it's fine. I'll give you a tip, and like whatever, we'll cancel it. Like, I don't want to. He said, no, I picked you up on purpose. I saw your name. I want to talk to you. So fine. So I get in his car. It's quite funny, right? I get in his car, which I thought was ethical. He had been discharged for a little bit, and I wasn't going to insult him. Whatever. He's driving me down the block, and it's all regulated and everything. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to have the opportunity to have you in my car, but now I could charge you for my time. And then he starts telling me about all of his sexual problems. They came back, and this and that. We're not going there. Okay, so I said to him, was I helpful? He said, yeah, you were very helpful. I said, well, if you want to come back, give me a call. Well, I don't have insurance anymore. Okay, there's a clinic downtown that I like. Maybe you can go there. Okay, I never heard from him, but these things happen all the time. Just you have to be on your feet, especially when you live in a small community. Rachel says she really enjoys working with you as her therapist. She asks if you're okay if she could check in with you via text daily and help her stay on track. Don't worry, she says, you can respond whenever you're free to do so. So we know that's a big no-no, but sometimes it happens by accident. Okay, a lot of clinicians use text messaging, and this is a technology discussion. A lot of them use technology for their practice. That's great, but just make boundaries. Like, for example, I tell my clients, here's my business card, it has my phone number, email address. You could text, call, or email me anything about scheduling if you're comfortable. But in the intake form, I have a very clear disclosure that text messaging and email is not HIPAA compliant. Even though I pay money to have HIPAA compliant technology, but I don't want to worry about, let's say they find me online at a different website, and you could buy Google Suites for $5 a month and get HIPAA compliant, or there are other things, Hushmail, other things you could do. We'll talk about that in a drop. But so what's it called? Oh, we got a question down there. Okay. You do not want to get involved with these type of things at all. And you also, even if you get a really, really tempting email that you really want to respond to, like the client's explaining why they can't come back to you, be very careful. That's a big pitfall. Okay, do not go there. You could. I always respond. Here's my phone number if you want to talk. Otherwise, you're going to end up getting into this back and forth race. It's not a good place to go. Denise reports that she is amazed by how well you have helped her. You blush naturally, knowing that you're an excellent clinician. I told my sister Kiara to come, and she wants to work with you too. It'll be so nice. We share hairstylists, manicures, banks, and so much more. What do you do? It's clearly a dual relationship. Don't go there. Just don't go there. If you did it by accident, it is what it is. We had one time where someone referred their sibling here, and the secretary had no way of knowing. They have different first names, different last names. And then the clinician says, gee, you look awfully familiar. Yeah, well, my sister sees you. Okay, no problem. You finish the session, and you just explain that I think there's a conflict of interest. If you think that your sister comes here, but I don't work with it, oh, no, I think she stopped. I'm not sure. Well, our policy is we don't see siblings. I don't think it's smart to see siblings either, especially young kids also, because then often one of them leaves and they both leave, and it just doesn't work. And I had kids that I used to see in the clinic, and they would always say, you saw my brother for 5 extra minutes. You don't even want to play tic-tac-toe with me, But it just became this comparison game. Or you were nicer, he got a better prize, so we don't do that. Just remember, write it down, okay? Documentation could really save you a tremendous amount. It's when I did my deposition for my most recent one was about 6 months ago. They literally combed through every single note that I ever wrote about what's this? Why is that misspelled? Because I'm a therapist, I don't spell that well. Give me a break. Okay, last segment here is the practical part. So we'll spend about 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions, now is your last chance. I have one question here. So I live in a small town. I used to live in a small town, and that is difficult, in dual relationships. This is all the classical things. I don't talk about small town relationships so much because Baltimore is not a small town, Maryland's not a small city. But you're right, there are some major ethical issues when you're dealing with a small town. Okay, this is the last segment. So we all want the ounce of prevention. Don't forget that. It could go such a long way. It'll save you hours of time if you have, anything that you picked up today. My biggest suggestion is take the 1 or 2 things that are loose and fix them. Okay, so 10 suggestions. So paperwork. Look over your paperwork and just make sure that you mention confidentiality, counseling relationship, including fees and termination processes, that they're here at will. That's really, really important. Just look at your paperwork and make sure that everything is according to your state board. Client's background, cultural competence is really important. I tell all my clients the first time they're here, after I get their information, I say, I'm male, I'm Caucasian, I'm Jewish, and that's different than you, right? Some of them, sometimes all of them are. Sometimes their age is a difference. I used to point out age and people got offended. What do you mean you're calling me old? You're calling me too young. So, and I just say, that doesn't mean I get everything about you, even though I have friends like you and I have friends in your back, right? So if I'm ever missing something, please just, if you don't mind, point it out to me. And they love it. They call me out. Joe, you don't get it. It's just this thing or that thing. Cool. Okay, so cultural competence. We have a training on that if you want it. If you're a psychologist, you don't have a choice. You'll have to take someone's cultural competence. Confidentiality. This is really important. It's really important, especially when you're working with minors, to, like we talked about, things come up and make sure that you disclose all that and share it with clients. Clients are not happy about confidentiality. One confidentiality issue I dealt with in previous offices is hearing other sessions going on in other rooms. Clients do not like that at all. So be really cognizant of preventing that. I think that's important. Professional competency. I put a picture of marriage and family therapy because my personal opinion is if you don't have specific training, and being married or attempting to be married is very good training, but it's not the same thing as marriage counseling training and modalities, which I think you really need to have that. Certain LGBT training, if you're part of that community, that's good training, but I think there's specific things that need to be dealt with. End-of-life care. These are all very sensitive issues that should be, make sure you have the proper training. Advertising, you'll have a nice ethical issue if you have a degree, but you're practicing at a lower level licensure, or if you say that you're the world expert on the topic and you've read 10 books on it or taken a CEU on it. Just be careful what you say. People use superlatives, and that's fine, but don't put extra letters after your name if they're misleading. I'm not so comfortable. People write like psychotherapist. I think it's a little confusing. Just write you're a licensed clinical social worker or a licensed professional counselor, and let them Google it if they don't know what it is. They'll figure it out. If you just write therapist, they're going to think you're a massage therapist, and they're going to be it's a really awkward session when they show up. Okay. Self-care. It's funny because the board doesn't like when CEUs focus on self-care because they want competence to help clients, which I think is funny. But it's one of the things you're going to hear from me a lot. We got to take care of ourselves. Like we're human, and that's really, really important. Dual relationships, they're complicated. I really try to stay away from them. If you're not sure about them, ask a supervisor. Supervisors are usually good at dual relationships and mandated reporting stuff. Evaluation, again, I recommend having one evaluation form in there. It just gives you what we used to call a GAF. They don't do GAF anymore, but something that gives you some global assessment of screening for basic mental health issues. I think it's good to cover yourself legally. Supervision, training, and teaching. If you're in that, make sure you're familiar with it. There's a lot of courses. It doesn't take much to become a supervisor. If you're a social worker, I think it's about 12 to 15 hours of training, and then you're a supervisor. For a LCPC, we need 18 hours. So I guess I'm a better supervisor. I don't know. I hope my supervisors like me and everything, but I think you have to be up on your game and learn what you're trying to do. And finally, technology, I think, is a huge deal. Being aware of the pitfalls, especially confidentiality issues and HIPAA compliance, is really, really important. We'll skip the last video. So I hope that you enjoyed this dental visit. The ethics were pleasant. I know I always have a good time with it because it helps me close in on the practice and make sure we're doing the things we need to do. If anybody has any questions, and I'll stay online for the online people. If anybody has any questions in the room. Okay, a couple of resources that I always recommend are listed in your book over there. And this is the final slide. If you want to stay in touch, you can. I appreciate you joining the Core Wellness family, and I look forward to seeing you guys in future training, and you guys here as well.
Thanks.
All right. You are officially. Congratulations on completing the 3-hour ethics training. I hope that this has helped to make you a better clinician. Over the years of delivering this course, I've gotten a lot of feedback. What was very interesting is that most people enjoy the back and forth conversation that I try to have. Although some trainings, of course, are more interactive and have more feedback from the participants that are there live. But most people like the practical application and the discussions about cases that I've dealt with, and I think they're relevant and important for you to think about in your own practice, and I think they bring them to life. Every once in a while I get a complaint that says, I wanted you to just kind of read the ethical guidelines and interpret them and discuss them, and sometimes in the trainings in ethics we do that, and sometimes we focus more on a story that we tell. We found that people are more receptive and find it more practical when we actually tell stories as opposed to just talk about abstract topics. But one thing that was very interesting to me was that I one time got a very harsh critical review from someone who, and I welcome that, and I am alerted to any feedback that's given back, and I think it's important and helps enhance. But basically, this person wrote that that I'm an academic person, and I did not appreciate that. I really wanted more hardcore law focus and not just stories. And okay, no problem. Feedback is feedback, and we thought about it, and we specifically designed this course, and we'll probably continue designing this course to be more focused on a story, a narrative, because we feel that's a better way to learn. Well, a few months later, I got an email from this person. I actually said, I apologize, I made a mistake. The things that you said were very practical. After I watched it, I kind of had always been used to this boring ethical discussion. And so I was just kind of surprised that yours was more of a narrative, it was more of a conversation. Yeah, you discussed all the topics that were important, confidentiality, dual relationships, gifts, etc. But it was kind of a story form, and it was just weird to me. But then, as I started going through my practice, I started noticing all the things that were wrong with my own intake forms and my own way of interacting with clients. And I really actually think that your ethical class was one of the most useful ones that I ever took. So, of course, that I respond to, and I wrote, thank you so much for sharing that with me. It's very meaningful. And I think that depending on your background, different people learn in different ways, but what I've found is that people do like to learn in a narrative way, and I hope that you'll slowly integrate what you've learned here and look at your own practice and really enhance it, because ultimately when you enhance it, you A, protect yourself from ethical violations and ethical lawsuits, but B, most importantly, it makes you a better clinician, and it helps you take care of the clients in a much more ethical and effective way. So I hope that this training will really greatly enhance your own clinical skills, and of course I welcome any questions that you might have. You can email me at josephtropper@gmail.com, or just follow any of the links that you see on our site to be able to contact me as well. And I look forward to hearing from you, and of course seeing you at many future Core Wellness family, which you're now part of, either trainings, the Category 1 in person, or Category 2 via home study. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.